Right now with capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number, or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know,
It's
Zach.
a tough one. I
It's
know,
really hard.
and maybe
Yes.
comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. So tonight we're gonna have more of a casual, chill stream. Look at memes. Look at kind of whatever we feel like, political stuff, urban planning stuff, whatever. And joining me tonight, as often is the case, is Dan Plaat, the glorious Three Left Show. And I keep forgetting the name of your new rebranding
That's
of the
fine.
show.
It's not like I've started yet. And also I don't think I've even settled on it. But
Oh,
it's
okay.
between what's left in Albany,
Oh, that's right. Which I like
um,
that a lot.
or what was the other option? What's left? No, hmm, everything like left of Albany. Oh, turn left in Albany. I don't know. You know what? I don't even remember because I'm going with what's left in Albany.
Sounds like what's left is
So
the clear winner there.
I guess so. I forgot the other option.
uh,
So first a little let's see, report back on things from the previous stream I was on. So that international flag is just like the nonprofit is promoting the flag,
ah,
and they've been doing so for a while since I've known about this flag since college, but they don't seem to be making any headway as their website didn't have any list of like we got these organizations to adopt their flag or to they didn't even have an option of buying it. They only had the files so that you could make it yourself, which doesn't bode well. Like shouldn't they even have a shop
yeah,
at least so you can buy it yourself?
yeah. Get some
Um
sort of revenue generated.
So maybe sub project contact the person doing that, and maybe it is just a one person project at this point,
Very well,
and then
maybe.
see what
Yeah,
the hell's up.
yeah. I'd like to know. It's a nice looking flag. I gotta say, it stands out. It's simple. It's not way too busy as so many of the modern designs of flags seem to be. Um, but yeah, it effectively conveys its message. So
So first, let's do something fun with the Jordan Peterson meme. Um,
definitely,
I play Command and Conquer. I mean, you said you haven't, but you have a
I
general
have
idea of
not.
it.
I
But
think I've seen it.
its claim to fame is that it had live action video. Not only the cut scenes were live action, which upped the budget significantly because you have to actually pay full
Pay people
actors, and
to be
sometimes they
reading.
actually got really like high names like Tim Curry.
Oh,
Um,
really? Tim Curry does a voice in this game?
I mean, it's video, it's full video, and that's the claim to fame. That isn't
Yeah.
just being a voice actor,
Okay.
but full video. And so when you're playing the real time strategy game, and you do like you complete an objective, it would trigger videos of like the other commander or your advisor, and they would pop up in a side frame and make some snippy comment. Um, and this is where the meme I've saved in one of my montages for the show with three lefts is I end one of them with it where Tim Curry is the premier of the Soviet Union in an alternate timeline
Nice.
where
Way to go, Tim.
this is Red Alert 3.
Okay.
And in the third one, the so like it's a Soviet Union's breaking up, and so Tim Curry, the premier, travels back in time with his general and kills Einstein, which as he explains prevents
Kills
the advert of
Einstein.
nuclear weapons and changes the course of the Cold War. And so they come back, and not only are things way better, Soviet Union has in fact conquered Europe or whatever, or at least there's everything shifted. So it's basically there's a concept is the Command and Conquer team wanted to make like all different technology, like the same a present, but like an alternative tech present. So it's like one with a Soviet Union with different technologies. But anyway, I'm assuming like so if you're playing the U.S. or the Allies, whatever it's called, and you're in the last level, and Tim Curry's like the premier is like he's like this is his he shows up and he's like you finish your objective and he goes, I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space.
That's a great line.
Yes, and you can look that up as well and play it after this one. So, and that's the real one. So you could have that as a comparison. So someone mocked up a recent, Jordan Peterson. I guess he was making, I don't know, it was an interview, probably not, but he was making these snippy videos, because he's just hates leftists so much. You'll see. So you can play it. So now that I think that's the context we need.
Okay. All right. Let's let it rip.
Building captured. Incoming transmission.
Conscript report. Moving out. Ready, cop.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Construction complete.
Establishing video up.
That's just perfect.
So you could so maybe like look up the Tim Curry going to commie space, or I'm sure there's probably compilations of Command and Conquer Red Alert 3. Voiceover video chat, whatever. We'll see who cancels who. It's always like, and it's so corny. It was so corny.
We'll see who
cancels who.
Woke more.
It's all like that. It's so much like, and it just, of course, the joke. Don't have to explain it. He's a cartoon character, and all the characters in this, yeah. So this is what pops up when you win the other, like as the Americans.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
Oh wow, that is so dramatic.
Exactly. And they're all like that. So oh geez, I should know his name. The man from Star Trek. It's Japanese man from Star Trek. I should really know his name.
Sulu?
Well, that's the character's name.
Yeah.
If we think about it long enough.
George Takei.
George Takei, that's it.
Yeah.
He plays the head of the Japanese empire.
Oh yeah.
So you could look up Takei and Command and Conquer 3. It's like, we will bomb Pearl Harbor. And he does it with his San Francisco accent. It's great.
Okay. Let me pull it up here.
American fools. Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
Brilliant. You are made of stupid.
Understand how well the Jordan Peterson clip fits in with those.
Yes.
You are made of
that yeah.
So
I've never haven't played the games, but I understood enough context clues to get the reference.
Yeah.
But that makes it all the more better. That's perfect.
Now the units are horribly balanced, and it's a little frenetic. I mean, it's definitely a game for the 13-year-old edgelord back in the late 90s.
I see.
I can't imagine anyone else enjoying it. that's just my thoughts on it. And there's plenty of other videos from gamers talking about Command and Conquer and its faults, and it's like there's a reason it didn't survive the aughts or it didn't go beyond. 01 was definitely the death knell because that was when you started getting actually competent real-time strategy games being made.
Yeah.
That just blew Command and Conquer away, and everyone just stopped, just put down
Gotcha.
Command and Conquer because they just kept trying to make things sillier and sillier, or just more over the top. Because they were churning them out like every year, if even maybe faster than that. Because anyway.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, that was a good warm up. Thanks for that.
So we'll move on. We'll move forward to Tim. But
Tim,
do the old one with Sam Cedar.
Old one with Sam Cedar. Gotcha.
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning. When he was not yet, I don't think he was not working at Vice, but this is what got him the Vice gig, and then everyone at Vice realized what an asshole he was. But it's definitely like he's a monster of our making. Not to, I mean by our, I mean the media landscape. But Sam Cedar, interviewed him as a serious person at one point, and it's like
little did you know.
It was all our fault. We platformed him. Platforming. This is before platforming was an art. Like we were arguing about platforming, and I think this was. It probably wasn't the thing that was being mentioned, but it was probably on people's minds. That's like there are all these actors that are the bane of our internet existence anyway, and it's like they got their start Occupy or post Occupy because there were all these left of center channels that the pre-existing internet media ecosystem that platformed a lot of them, and because like they didn't have money, but then as soon as they had an audience from the platforming, they could get big sponsors and right-wing sponsorships of sorts, benefactors, and then boom, they're off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
In Joe Rogan's case, I guess like corporate sponsorship or buyout in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it, but of course there's the relationship of like, the money probably changed how he looks at things. I mean, material conditions, or did his I mean, it wasn't his politics that got him rich. It was the content of being a relaxed podcast. But anyway,
willing to.
Let's start, and I'll rant about the other 99.
Okay. Cool. All right.
And for context, for anyone watching or this at any future time, I was a active participant in Occupy Wall Street at Zuccotti Park.
Mm-hmm. So did you ever meet Tim Pool?
Absolutely not.
Because I thought that was his beat at the time. I thought he was covering in Zuccotti Park.
If being there for a few hours counts as covering something.
I see. So he was doing the activism tourism sort of bit.
That is exactly why I could not, for the life of me, understand why anybody cared about him.
Yeah.
But his only talent, as I was, prepping my point, his only talent seems to be being able to be popular online, or the ability to game the algorithm, kind of like Donald Trump, a little pipery, just gets platformed by everybody by being out there, and maybe he was an innovator in the whole I'm going to stream all the time, make it about me, gonzo journalism, that and then be really humble brag about it, by being humble, like, oh, I'm not, I'm a journalist, but I'm not going to say that I'm a special kind of journalist. I'm just well, you'll see it yourself, so then we can comment on it.
Cool. All right, let's get it.
But yes, I never ran into him. Never had the opportunity. My assumption is he was just never there enough, because if he was there enough, I probably would have bumped into him.
Probably.
And knew who he was.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of standard characters at Zuccotti Park that show up on other videos or kind of compilations of like characters at Zuccotti Park and Occupy, and look at the crazy Occupy people.
Right.
And yeah, I bumped into them or were aware of them, and so I could tell you more about each of their actual lives, or what their deal was. Tim Pool, it just wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wasn't
not a
there,
presence.
and that's there's a lot of 1960s kind of folks where it's like, you weren't really there, man. You don't get it's stolen
Yeah.
valor is what it is. It's stolen valor, stolen anarchism.
All right, let's take a look.
Welcome to the program. One of the guys involved in my favorite Occupy Wall Street feed, I'm talking about the other 99, Tim Pool. Tim, welcome to the program.
His favorite feat.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Now, give us a little background. When did you did you start doing this on your own? How many of there are you, and when did you start?
Well, we started with 4 of us. There's Henry James Ferry, Will McLeod, Jesse LaGreca, who most of you probably know, and then me, Tim Pool. And we've been doing this since the very beginning of Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah.
It's sort of been a snowball rolling down a hill. As time goes on, we build more momentum, and I guess we saw a really big spike in that this past week.
Right. And
it speaks in the third person.
My favorite moment.
Yeah,
that's
bizarre.
in watching your coverage.
Well, I'm saying like he's part of the movement. Like he's part of things.
Oh, I see. Yeah, he's inserting himself into a movement that he's barely even looked at.
He's there, but again, I was there like for a total of 30 hours a week, combined hours, and didn't know any of these 4 people. Never watched the feed. Maybe I didn't need a feed, but I was aware of feeds that were going on. One in particular was by a guy named Mike, who I'm still kind of interacting with on Facebook. Still know him. And to me, there were feeds from. Okay, maybe it's because Occupy Wall Street had a media working group. Okay, as a horizontalist anarchist organization of sorts, that we had working groups, and there was a media working group. The media working group had streamers in it. It had people with the equipment, and they had streams. So to me, those were the Occupy streams. Those were the streams everyone should have been watching, because they were not because they were official for some reason, but they were the people who were in the movement. They were part of it, like in a real way, material way. If this other 99 stream, Sam's favorite feed, these are hangers on.
Yeah.
And that annoys me. I mean, I think Sam, obviously he's very, very likable, and many lefties like him. I'm in a minority who don't like him.
Oh, you don't like him? Okay.
Well, when he is talking to the right or moderates, or making fun of whatever, or commenting, he's good. But when he wants to comment or argue with people left of him, it's annoying as hell. And
sure.
And the fact that like he's not an activist, or he hasn't been part of any activist movement, so he's speaking from someone who's always been behind the mic.
Sure.
And that's always, that to me comes through. That's invisible to others who haven't been in my shoes, but to those who have been in the struggle, there's always that separation that's comes across in how he argues about things and how he sees things, particularly third-party politics, because he's not for any third-party politics whatsoever.
Oh yeah, he's very derisive of any third party. That's true.
Yeah, and when I realized how derisive he was, that's when I'm just like,
I could see that. Yeah.
It's
which is unfortunate, because.
But why wasn't the other 99 his favorite stream and not the the Occupy Wall Street media group? Because it didn't have a snazzy name. Because
probably just didn't get the coverage that the others. You would have actually had to know someone who's down there at the very least to
and this is the problem with the media landscape for the last 15 years and change, is that what gets seen and covered are the people who are good at being seen and covered, not what's worthwhile. Because the algorithm or whatever gets viral isn't necessarily good or isn't necessarily authentic. And the other 99, the fact that I would see the other 99 page, Facebook or whatever, more than I would see like actual Occupy, media group content or something or other. I'm like, what is this other 99? It was always sus to me because I didn't know what the name meant, other 99. Because to me,
it still doesn't make any sense. No.
To me, it meant you weren't in the 99. Like, what's the other 99? It was always sus to me because it's like you're saying you're a part. And no one ever explained it, or I didn't see an explanation.
Yeah, of course not.
So, and it seemed to outlast the movement. It was always around. I mean, I still see, these pages have remained active, which tells you that they were never part of the movement in the first place because they wouldn't still be active otherwise. That there were these separate media ventures or whatever, and the Tim Pool was part of it is something I didn't know until I found this video the other day, and it actually like, oh, that's why it was sus to me, because it was these hangers-on, these tourists to Occupy who are like getting a thrill at being part of being present at a historical event, but not being part of it, or at least feeling like they were part of it.
Yeah,
but they weren't part of it.
Yeah, it was more about their own clout and their rising of their own star over.
Because as soon as the movement was crushed by the state, Tim Pool does this immediate turn. If he didn't have, I mean, he seemed to be pro it as long as he could get clout from it. Then as soon as he couldn't, or it wasn't popular, he needed to do something else that was popular. And what was popular? Basting social justice warriors. That's what happened after Occupy, at least in 2013-14. So that's what he turned to. He's always been chasing that, and that's always what it will be. All right, so that was just the first 10 seconds.
Yeah.
The night that people marched in front of City Hall and then began to move up Broadway to Union Square. And at one point, the protesters grabbed the kettling net and began to run through the street to it. And I still, we of course played the clip at the time, but it still resonates in my head. This night belongs to Occupy Wall Street. Give me a sense of what's been the most sort of dramatic moments for you as you've been covering this.
There's obviously that night with the occupiers taking the orange kettling that really just left me in awe, and that's you heard me yell, "Tonight belongs to Occupy Wall Street," and they started to hold their net over their head and chanted, "Whose net? Our net." There was one of the other most intense events for me was when the vandals who were draining the tires on the NYPD vehicles, sort of rushed at me.
Yeah, right, vandals.
So you already saw that he wasn't really supportive.
They're swinging at me. One guy
No.
grabbed me, and then I think another
sorry,
really
back up. I interrupt.
awe-inspiring moment is when the
back
freight
up
truck was trying to leave the park at me with the
dramatic moments for you as you've been covering this.
There's obviously that night with the occupiers taking the orange kettling that really just left me in awe, and that's you heard me yell, "Tonight belongs to Occupy Wall Street," and they started to hold their net over their head and chanted, "Whose net? Our net." There was one of the other most intense events for me was when the vandals who were draining the tires on the NYPD vehicles, sort of rushed at me, trying to get me to turn the camera off, and they're swinging at me. One guy grabbed me,
swinging at him.
Yeah, it's so weird that people don't want to be doxxed.
That totally happened. Happened.
And also, where's the footage for that, Tim? But yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the thing about the live streaming then, because this is before Twitch, is that the live streams were never recorded. They're not recordings. They're live streams, and that was it. They're gone. They're not. You can only watch them while they're happening, and nothing gets saved.
Oh, it was all ephemeral back then. It's hard to
So
remember how different the technology was back then. But yeah, you're
right,
probably
so
right.
you don't have any of these live streams. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Not even maybe they do on some server, but they don't get saved like YouTube Live or any of the live streaming now. So like, so it's all lost in like tears in the rain. But you can see like if you're naive, I mean with hindsight, Tim's talking like, you know, when he says tonight belongs to Occupy, is he saying that like that's a good thing or a bad thing? And with hindsight, especially with his little anecdote about being like swung at by vandals, because
Yeah.
maybe he probably told, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, guys. That's wrong.
Hey there, fellas.
Or even if he didn't, yeah, when Black Bloc are damaging police property, they don't want to be filmed. Do you think why they wouldn't want to be filmed? Or any activist
Big mystery.
for that or anyone marching, actually.
Yes.
Because if it's declared a riot and it can be proven because of your stream or video that they were there and it can be used against them, they can get 5 years.
Yeah.
It can be used by the police state. You know, the police state that Tim actually thinks he doesn't like, or that he's against authoritarianism, but he does things that helps the police state without knowing it because he's
of course.
And when others try to tell him, you're doing things that could put us in danger via the police state, not you, but because you're holding us responsible. See, his interpretation, dumb guy interpretation is, you could hold us you could hold us accountable, Tim, as a super cool journalist, and we don't like that because we're doing things that are wrong. No, actually, it's you're getting stuff that could be subpoenaed by the cops, and that would be bad. But to Tim, actually, you know, draining the air out of police cruisers is bad, and actually he does want to. So yeah, probably maybe a fight did occur, or he got, you know, manhandled a little,
like geez,
or intimidated, whatever. And this is, of course, and so from the get go, he was never an ally or whatever, but he's always a busybody. Because it's not like he was in any working group or had any relationship with anyone in the movement, anyone marching. No. He was just a bystander, and so that's kind of what he is even now. He's just a bystander. I'm just a bystander commenting on things.
I'm just a milquetoast fence sitter. That's his big phrase for himself. Milquetoast fence sitter.
I don't know if he says. Well, yeah. Sometimes in some clips he's acting like a fence sitter, and he doesn't have a side.
Yeah.
But obviously he will. I call out anyone. I call out the left,
right,
authoritarian, because I don't understand any of their politics, actually. And I'll call out the government because I don't understand anything the government does.
Right. Well, and I mean, it's all just a shtick anyway. He will take absolutely every position on every issue and vacillate back and forth between all of them, just so he has plausible deniability afterward and be like, hey, well, you know, I said this could happen. You know, just like when he was so tremendously wrong about Trump having a 49-state landslide in the election. He's like, well, I could be wrong at the end. So that gives him the coverage. But you can always tell which position he actually cares about.
In which case, because you don't need to listen to him. Why is anyone...
I don't know why anyone does, but you can always tell what he believes because he will be the loudest and the most forceful with the positions he actually holds. And it always just happens to be, you know, positions from the right.
Yeah.
And then he'll just be kind of, you know, mild and like, oh, just asking questions when he's talking about positions that, you know, the left or even liberals hold. So,
well, the thing about the positions is they're never actually effective on any policy. Because when, like, with him and Rogan, when they talk policy, like, and this is where, you know, as leftist communicators are like, look, let's always just talk about, get off of culture war stuff, talk policy. That's where we get people on our side. You know, just with social democracy policy, because they do agree, but then they don't agree about how we get it, or they don't agree. They don't like how we, I don't know, operate in a cultural space or even to political, because when we talk about political strategy, we actually understand things, and that leads us to conclusions they don't understand, they can't comprehend.
Right. Yeah.
Whether it's use of violence or justifiable violence, or what is just, or even ask the question, what's justifiable violence? What is justice? These simple, Socratic questions, or political science questions that, they'll go around in circles on forever because they just don't think about them. But only except beyond like a simple moralistic, moralistic way, and then they're the true moralists in a way, because that's all they ever do, right? Because they don't talk. If it's on policy, then they'll like, oh yeah, single payer healthcare that is the right thing to do. But they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They have no way. Just like most moderates who say they want, the best of both, and they want, to do common sense politics. Common sense. What does that mean? It means it's a conservative position, because it's like they agree with X policy, but they don't want to do anything to achieve it.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
that would mean shaking things up or doing things that
Yeah.
are dangerous, or
Yeah.
going against the status quo.
Or endangering their favored position, their privileged position. So,
Economic position is what we're
exactly.
talking about.
That's
I'm not
what I
talking
mean.
about a political position. That's why it's amorphous. But an economic position is the true position they hold, and that's why single payer healthcare is they can't, or nationalized health insurance, we can call it what it really is. They can't actually be for that, whether
Right.
or not they feel that it's harming economic freedom or something.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
they
yeah.
do at the same time. Well, like most Americans, they hold these incongruous ideas in their heads, and that's where a lot of comedy comes from, the ambiguity.
Which is why I've always been kind of amazed there's not more leftist comedians out there, like stand-up comedians. Like once in a while you get one with some liberal positions, but you don't really see many leftists just doing stand-up. But there's so much that's hilarious about what you're just talking about, that just the cognitive dissonance, our crazy world. I mean, there's plenty of leftist humorists on the internet who make, good memes or videos and stuff like that. But like stand-up comedy
Yeah,
somehow
this is where the
devoid
whole
of that.
like comedians, they touch on the things that no one else will. That always runs Hollywood with me, because they'll well, actually, sometimes the conversation is like, true satire. The real like transgressive target isn't the elite or the ruling class. It's actually to target the people, the masses, and that's
Yeah.
what like the popular comedians really do.
Mhm.
They're not satirizing the top; they're satirizing the bottom, and that's that's something that George Carlin did. He was able to do both. He did both.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Very true.
and you can have, like, say, Lewis Black. He'll satirize the top as far as just standard politics, because you have to work at a level that your audience understands.
True.
So if we craft jokes about the ambiguity of moderate positions, I think we're going to have trouble, because either we're going to actually be attacking our audience, and we'll see
Mm.
how well they can actually take a joke when it's
True.
actually they're the target.
True.
But like, what would that joke be? It would have to work at it. We'd have to be comedy writers. It can be satirized, but like I don't think I've encountered a stand-up routine that makes the bit is about how the contradictions in American politics. I mean, in the independent voter. Is there maybe let's look that up.
Yeah.
Stand up independent voter or something. But you know what? Well, it'll probably exist, but it wouldn't hit hard with me. Like, it wouldn't be what I'm looking for. But the thing about comedy is you shouldn't be picky about it. If you know what you want, then it wouldn't be surprising and funny when you encounter it.
Yeah. In theory. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Let's move on.
And then I think another really just awe-inspiring moment is when the freight truck was trying to leave the park with all of the possessions, and there was, about 50 to 75 of the protesters linked arms, and they chanted, "We are the 99%." And the police were pushing on the crowd with the barricades, trying to break them apart, and they couldn't do it. And the freight truck actually had to back up and retreat. It was, everyone cheered in victory.
Tell me, what is your agenda? I mean, how do you perceive yourself? Are you a reporter? Are you an activist? Is there something in between? I mean, what you're doing is a relatively new phenomena in media, to be live streaming like this with so few bars to entry. How do you perceive yourself?
I perceive myself as an activist. I've always perceived myself as an activist. I'm doing this for transparency, which I feel is really the most important thing.
Transparency.
When it comes to
who's being transparent?
Too often, or actually, it's
protests or the police.
That history is written by the winners, and on Tuesday and Thursday, that just wasn't true. History was just written on the live broadcast through my point of view.
Stop there.
Yeah.
Did you get that? That was a true Tim Poolism right there. History is written by the victors, but in the last 2 nights it weren't. There just was through my live cast and my point of view.
Yeah.
So he perceived that his live streams that were through his point of view, because he is just as much on the live stream. It's I think probably I never looked. I didn't care for him because, as you can see from that picture there, the live stream is his face and whatever's behind him. They are about him being there.
Yes. Oh, he centers himself on everything.
Yes. So it's like, I don't want to watch a live stream where it's just somebody's face. I want to see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you say history was not written by any particular person? It just existed.
It's just there. It's just to be discovered and uncovered.
The camera is not a lens, literally a lens that you look through.
Oh yeah, that's a sleight of hand that
Yes.
What was that guy? The Project Veritas guy is always pulling. He's like,
But
the camera doesn't lie. The camera doesn't lie. He's like, well, creative editing lies. Choosing your targets in a particular way can lie and present the wrong
There's a
picture,
simple meme, little cartoon where you have a camera angle where like it looks like one person is chasing the other with a knife.
Right.
But
Yeah.
when the actual thing that's being shot is actually the reverse, but because of the shapes, like one person's foot looks like a knife when they're the one running away.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and he would know this if he had written any like DBQ essays in high school, but he dropped out of high school, so he doesn't know framing, lenses. Like,
And I was, man, just astounded when you mentioned that he didn't even go through high school. Like, I think didn't you say he dropped out in like junior high even?
no, the factoid was that he dropped out after the first 3 months of high school.
Okay.
Like he didn't do anything for the first 3 months, so it's like there's no point in continuing. Or he got failing grades, and so he was embarrassed and like, well, this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore. And his parents let him because they didn't care. Like, well, how was he doing in middle school? Probably poorly. Well, he just wanted to skate. He'd be a little skater boy. So, and find his own way in life, which apparently he had plenty of resources to do that. I guess he didn't have to get any kind of service job to pay for anything. So, yeah, there's the picture.
Yeah, it's probably not a great source, but that is the cartoon that I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
I
That is the one I was thinking of. There's similar type of cartoons. I think one is where like someone's getting pushed out of the way from. Oh yeah, it's just someone. It's actually simpler. Someone is pushing another person, but the outside of the frame, they're being pushed out of the way from a falling piano. So their life is being saved by the person pushing them. So there's another
Very good.
context matters. And Tim Pool does not understand context.
Oh, not whatsoever. Not
So
whatsoever.
let's. Just let me know when you're tired of this. I didn't actually watch all of this. This is as far as I got.
No, this is good. I'm very much enjoying seeing this early Tim Pool.
It hasn't changed at all.
The villain backstory. No, not at all. Like,
not in the slightest. The way he talks about things and it's Sam Cedar. Like, I mean, he's interviewing him, so it's not arguing. But just imagine, like, just seeing the hindsight of like the fast forward where you go to Tim Pool arguing with Sam. And Tim making his Marvel comparisons, like, I'm trying to explain basic philosophy to you, Sam. And Sam's like, I don't care.
I don't care. I don't care about your dominology. Yeah.
I don't care that Thanos is a utilitarian. Like, to you,
is a utilitarian.
To you,
Christ.
represents utilitarianism because he doesn't at all. Represents
of course not.
He represents a strong man.
Of utilitarianism. Yeah.
It's par for the course for, blockbuster movies is that villains are the straw man of a philosophy.
Exactly.
But at least villains have philosophies. Heroes don't usually have philosophies outside of a basic moralism.
Outside of punch bad guy.
And there's my media commentary there.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea that Thanos was just this pure utilitarian, like the only way to save half the universe is to destroy the other half.
The other half, yes.
Of it. Like, why not double the size of the universe?
And what I didn't understand about, maybe I've made this rant before, but the thing I couldn't understand about the mainstream conversation about Thanos and the fact that there's this audience that thinks he's cool and that he was right is that they seem to take him at his word when he when he talks, because I guess he sounds very convincing. That like, oh, my home planet, we had an unsustainable civilization and I warned them, and then things went bad and I don't want this happening elsewhere, and that's my motivation, my backstory. And I'm thinking, we spent a few movies now watching this guy lie to everyone that he ever interacts with, and being cruel for this, almost for the sake of cruel. Well, I mean, it's cruelty for the sake of his mission, right? And he's willing to do and say anything for his mission and his agenda, which is, this, again, pseudo-utilitarian philosophy. How do we know he's not making all of this up? Maybe, and if he was, like, because he was a scientist, like a Jor-El type, maybe he caused the disaster on his home world. It doesn't look like an unsustainable, like, it doesn't look like a drought hit here. It looked like a big mad science experiment went wrong. And maybe he's trying to atone for it. Like, there's an actual real story that he obviously doesn't want to talk about because it's embarrassing. It doesn't take a lot to dismiss or to recontextualize Thanos's motivations into being really dumb. I mean, it's not actually, the simplest thing is to say it's not utilitarianism, it's Malthusianism.
Right.
Which itself was a pseudo-scientific proposal from a man named Malthus, an English elitist social scientist who didn't use real data and didn't have any real practice outside of thinking, or rather, his observations were based on population studies, but they were they were just limited by the original story is that he wanted to impress death, right, and making up those and that's like, I understand why they gave him an actual reason for wanting to kill half the universe, because trying to impress a woman is really dumb, and I don't think audiences would like that, because it's an old trope that goes back. I mean, it was written in the 70s, right? Or 80s. I mean, it's old. It's not, I mean, that old, not that old. But there's like all this other media has been updated. But the thing about the Avengers is it hasn't been updated, and the villains haven't been recontextualized. I was just seeing a conversation, a little piffy conversation on Facebook about Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy can be changed decade to decade based on how mainstream the environmental movement was. Represented, she's like, just a bad guy who's plant themed. Then it becomes exterminate humanity and just genocidal. Now, like a lot of Batman villains, they're more like they're not criminals for the criminality's sake or just being outsiders. They can actually have agendas and motives. So, this is a comedy show, but in the Harley Quinn show, Poison Ivy rebrands herself as an eco-terrorist, which makes perfect sense. This is how I see it. She wants to punish polluters, which in the animated series it was her motivation. She didn't. Well, she wasn't actually, though she did hate people, and so she's a mask. What do you call it when you hate humanity?
Yeah.
Now, starts with an M.
Misanthrope.
Yeah, she's a misanthrope. But she usually, when she targets people, it's usually for environmental crimes. So
sure.
That's
that
I can appreciate that. Not like the Joker. The Joker has only narcissistic motivations. So
it's I'll just prove the world's as psychopathic as he is.
But Poison Ivy was one of the few Batman villains that wasn't just like motivated by like an innate narcissism. So that's why I like her. That you could keep. I mean, in the animated movies, she's actually just kind of out for money or something like that. Misanthropic.
But I remember from that god awful original run of Batman with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze.
Oh yeah. With
that Poison Ivy too. She was like, what my demands are is stop fossil fuels right now. Shut everything down.
Yeah.
And Bruce Wayne's like, well, that would kill millions of people and stuff. And she's like, well, I don't care. You're gonna do it.
Well, that wasn't a line. Those weren't real lines in the movie, but
she said something to that effect, though, as I recall. Maybe I'm mixing it up with something else.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. She does mention the whole like Wayne Industries, like, she's posing as a reporter or something, and she's like, what about the pollution that you're doing in the rainforest? And then he deflects to like, well, actually, we're doing a rainforest charity ball.
Yeah. Right.
So yes, okay, you're right about that. It is a similar conversation. I kind of imagine maybe I don't know what's in the comics. I mean, she's dating Harley, but the like her true reforming, like no more actual murder, even as an eco-terrorist, would be that she's like she has, because this is like a theme that I would see in certain Batman media animated, is that the villains would be reformed, or they just need a chance because society never gave them one to start with, and that's why they're supervillains. So when they at least get well enough to not do the murder, Bruce Wayne will usually step in his role, like have the ability to hire them. There's a few examples where like Bruce Wayne, not Batman, Bruce Wayne hires them to give them a job, and usually something goes wrong. But I can imagine like Dr. Pamela Isley will head up the Wayne Foundation's ecological, environmental conservation branch, and she'll be the one picking out what parts of Gotham get saved or whatever. That's like a best case scenario.
Sure.
But like, what was the examples where like, it was Scarface, Bruce Wayne. There's in the animated series, he hires the ventriloquist just to give him a job in the mailroom, so it's not interesting, but he gives him a job,
right?
Because like there's the box, the box hasn't been banned, so you gotta give people, gotta be able to give people second chances, and he would pay for Harvey Dent's surgery to fix his face. There's an episode like that.
Right.
So he does put his money to use, but it's mostly just to help individual people. So there's always that point of like, he's not helping society evolve, or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's always acting in humanitarian grounds, though. So I don't like the Batman bashing as much, like unless it's directed in the right way, which is that all superhero stories are not sociologically woke.
For sure. Yeah, it is always about the individual taking all the power and responsibility onto themselves to individually take on other individuals who are trying to enact their stuff. There's almost never systems involved in any of it, really.
Except that, like, you have a corrupt city, and that solution is for people moralistically to act better, and they need to be inspired to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just kind of like the...
But yeah, say material conditions don't play any part, except
Right.
that the rich are able to exploit more because they're rich.
Right. It's the neoliberal view that it's not that the system is bad. It's just we have the wrong people in the right positions of power.
Interesting that that reminds me of the story of Robert Kennedy. That when he worked for his brother, he was Attorney General, and he kind of believed this up until when his brother was assassinated, but in his work, he just he had the view that you just need the right people. But when his brother was assassinated, he just became very woke as far as, I mean, he believed in systemic causes and there needed to be systemic change. And this is what made him the more progressive Democratic Party candidate when he was assassinated. More than any other.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Shall we return to the Tim pool?
Oh, yes.
I mean, what? I mean, I think that's a very interesting point because I think this, Occupy Wall Street, in many respects, the documentation that you do and the media that the movement
streams aren't
itself
safe.
Puts out
is
true. Redefining how it can the entire both the process and the story simultaneously. I mean, it's interesting to me because, when Occupy Wall Street first started, it got very little media coverage, but managed to grow despite the fact that it wasn't getting the traditional media coverage because they were putting it out themselves. Now, when you started, what were your hopes?
I guess I really didn't have any. We started working on a way to do a live broadcast, and I found the Ustream mobile app, and I thought, hey, that's really easy to do. I can just point my cell phone. And the original intention was we were going to have a bit of political theater where Henry would do his conversation with the 1%. But, we saw an arrest happen, and action started happening, and so it quickly changed to spontaneous, on-the-ground reporting using a live broadcast that people could just see what's happening and decide for themselves.
What does he mean when he says interview the 1%?
Is that what you're using? Only an
Is he talking about they were interviewing Wall Street traders? Because the interesting thing about the background of the history is mainstream media coverage only started with Occupy because you had Wall Street traders or neighbors of the park going to their friends at ABC and the local, because New York has all the media corporations there. They would go to their friends in the media sector and ask them to do coverage because they wanted to know what was going on as neighbors of the protest. Yes. And some of them had, positive motives behind it because there were plenty of neighbors who were, sympathetic or they understood. They know they're cogs in the machine, but they're just well paid and they have the good life. Meanwhile, but they're always passing, dregs on the street, so they're conscious of those things. They just don't know what to do about it because they're as powerless as anyone else.
Sure.
And it was a mix of that and the people who knew media people who just wanted to know. And so, and I'm not going to talk to them. So, can you cover them? And that's how we started getting coverage. It wasn't from mass media and going viral. There was still a role, as there still is now, I suppose, that things don't get mass consciousness until there's mass media coverage. So no matter how much we kind of have these other channels in our own like independent media system, it's still like we still have that trap where like everything that Tim Pool and all the other reactors are reacting to, they're still reacting at the end of the day, mainstream news.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're doing the reporting, but like, I guess in some ways, what they choose to cover is what's deemed important. Because it's not like any of the reactors are out doing journalism, which is where Jordan Chariton tries to flip the script by going out and doing journalism and actually talking to the people. Like his thing right now, his project is going to West Virginia and basically talking to all the people who have been screwed by Joe Manchin and that they hate Joe Manchin. And this is Joe Manchin's West Virginia. These are the people that Joe Manchin says he represents, but really no one in West Virginia gives a shit. And they're economically repressed. And suffering. So that's who's doing right now, and that's the kind of coverage that should always kind of exist. There's all this great activism and resistance to capitalism happening, but it doesn't get mainstream coverage, and it doesn't even get covered in left-wing spaces as much, unless there's a conceited effort to do so, a concentrated effort. So.
Yeah,
like our program, affiliated program.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check it out, everybody. But yeah, I also thought it was interesting how he says that he had no expectations going into it. Like, no, why are you there if you? First of all, why are you there if you don't really care about it? I guess, and then also
It comes off like that. I'm not going to criticize that line so much because when I went, I didn't have high expectations. I'm talking about day one. I'm talking about day one, though. Day one of Occupy Wall Street. I'm working off of the Adbusters call to Occupy Wall Street. And so I go to a protest because I was in the mood after the Arab Spring to protest. And hey, it was a sizable protest. I mean, it wasn't that big. It was like 100 or so. And there was all anarchists and or radicals types. And but it's like, hey, these are like the people I actually want to be around. They're not like milquetoast libs, which I had been stuck in as previous conversations in the new atheist movement. So I enjoyed and I hung out at Zuccotti as we were settling down, having some circles, and others were starting to like set up camp, and not extensively, but just because it was good weather, they were just going to sleeping bags out. And it was like a sleep in because like I knew there had been like sleep outs for the homeless as fundraisers and things like that. This was established like activist thing to do. And I didn't know like how many days it would last, but I thought my expectation was, it'd be interesting to have a protest that actually lasts longer than a few hours, A, and B, actually sticks around, for longer than a few hours. Because I was not good on protesting. I mean, I didn't think it was effective or worth doing because any protests I've been to were short. They might get media coverage, that 30-second spot on the news.
Maybe a window gets broken
and it was gone, and it would have no effect.
Right. Yeah, it's not long term. It's just a registering of outrage and movement.
My expectation for Occupy Wall Street was that it would last a few days, because in Albany, that's as long as the sleep outs would be for a weekend or something. But when it lasted a whole week, or I knew it was still happening, a week later, through channels and whatever, I went back the next Friday, and then I went every Friday. And then after a week or so, I went twice a week, because it just got bigger and bigger with each week, with more people coming. And it was the second weekend, I think, we got mass media coverage. And then it's like, wow, this is actually really important. This isn't just 100 anarchists doing something in downtown New York, but a national and then global protest movement, but only as far as protest movement, with some arms of it branching off into other resistance and other types of activist projects.
Right.
So it did come of something, but
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it was just.
but not. It wasn't everyone who participated, because one chunk of people who participated were already like apparatchiks in the nonprofit industrial complex, or professional activists. Another third were new, and they started projects because of Occupy, and that includes me, I suppose. And another third were then tourists, people visiting, maybe thinking it's
wanted to be a
interesting,
part of it.
but then having nothing but complaints about how this wasn't their expectation. I'm not going to change for this movement. Or they had preconceived things that like, this is how we do politics, and I want to make this thing do politics the way I want. And they weren't anarchist, or it's like, this is too anarchist. They don't know, or they didn't even understand it was anarchism, and they didn't want to. They had a mental block that stopped them from recognizing or learning something from the anarchism imbued in it.
Sure. Couldn't see past reformism and maybe getting some legislation out of it or something like that.
Yeah, because they were really, really stuck in the way things work. But me and others, that the chunk I say who became full like activists or revolutionaries out of it, we were we were disillusioned with the system and everything involved with it.
Sure.
So we were craving something completely different, which an anarchistic General Assembly is, and the horizontal working group organization is. Okay, enough Occupy stuff.
Yeah, but I guess just one more point. I think there's one thing about it's one thing to go into a protest like that not expecting much is going to happen, and that's a one way of looking at not having much expectations. The way I take Tim saying it though is he just kind of was an empty vessel, and felt that he was going in without any bias or with no agenda or anything like that, just going there to be a pure documentarian, as though that's something that's possible to be.
Well, he does believe that he's always and always has been an empty vessel with no agenda and bias.
Right.
But this is a delusion, because you always have a bias.
Absolutely.
And if you believe you don't have a bias, it usually means you're biased towards the status quo,
which is a bias, yeah.
Which is conservative bias. So, and that's Tim Pool to a T.
Yep.
Because the only thing he's consistent on is that he's a conservative.
Yeah.
But it's conservatism out of ignorance, and
right. Well, just in curiosity,
and being a empty vessel. That he is nothing. He is empty. He's a himbo, which in certain contexts very sexy,
sure,
fetishistic, but obviously not in this context.
Right.
Because that's play acting, play act a himbo, but not when it's real. It's very unsexy.
It's a totally different thing.
It's like they're doing,
No, I know what you mean. It's like how Hassan calls himself a himbo all the time, and that's endearing because he also actually does stuff that's
and that he's not a weeb, even though he's a total
weeb, yeah.
That's what it makes it a joke.
Right. Yeah.
There's an ambiguity. Is he really an anime nerd?
Right.
He doesn't talk about it all the time. He doesn't do a lot of it. But it comes out. It's something that's private that comes out in certain times.
Right.
So yeah.
Big difference there though.
Nani?
All right.
he's so funny when he's being a weeb.
Absolutely. All right. Continuing on.
iPhone, is that it?
Well, I'm actually using a Galaxy S2. But yeah,
wow.
that's about it.
Phone,
What's
important.
a Galaxy X2?
It's a Galaxy S. It's a Droid phone. It's a Sprint Unlimited.
So you shoot all of it through your phone?
Talk about the data plan, Tim. Let's
Yeah,
hear it.
I
Sam,
have
no. This
the
is
Sprint
Sam who's
LTS
asking. This
2.
is
I know.
Sam being a dullard.
I know,
This
but
is Sam,
really.
like he doesn't have any questions left, so he's just asking about like what tech he uses. Because this is as Sam said, this is totally new. I don't understand anything about this.
Yeah.
Sam is a perpetual old guy to me.
Oh, that's true.
Because
I mean,
he's
he gets
been in this for
zero
a
references.
while.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what makes him like any figure, like the Sam Cedar thing. But any figure who's like been an activist or been a person like a media personnel, like a media guy like him,
Yeah.
and hasn't changed really over the decades. Like
He's been in his lane.
He's been in his lane
pretty comfortably.
He got in his lane in the early aughts, maybe in the 90s, and with Janine Garofalo on Air America.
Air America.
And working with Air America is definitely gonna like sour you on most like certain anarchist, not just anarchist, activist project making.
Yeah.
Or prefiguration. There's not going to be a lot of prefiguration because Air America was supposed to be a prefiguration of a independent, people-funded mainstream media source, and it collapsed or was sabotaged because it wasn't actually democratic in its operations.
Oh yeah.
Like the full story. It's a really complicated story about Air America, but like let's see if I can remember. You just had like certain board members that just sabotaged everything, and then they sold the company or something. It was just a mess. It's hard to get the full story. It's so confusing, and it's obfuscated on purpose sometimes. But Sam has made videos where he explains the whole story or his side of it.
Yeah, I always kind of took it as just kind of a not even leftist, but just a liberal answer to right wing, sort of radio, like the Rush Limbaughs of the day and stuff like that.
Yeah, because they believe that's as far as they can go and be successful, and that's what really annoys me. And this is Sam talks like this in every area. That there's a certain level you need to stay in the Overton window, and this is as far left as you can go and be successful, and that's as far left. Like that's where his lane is. So anyone outside of like further left of that lane is crazy and not like no efficacy and and so on.
Yeah. So I guess what even is the market for that? Because NPR is pretty dominant in that realm already. I guess it would just be for people that want a little more edginess to the jokes but
he doesn't get Koch Foundation money.
Okay, so they probably did have funding issues too.
He's not funded like NPR is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I listened to him for a good 3 years at college.
Did you?
Yeah, in my early years of college, which would be 08 to, not 08, 07 to 09.
Yeah.
And that's probably when I stopped.
Yeah, I was not aware of him until probably like 3 or 4 years ago. So I don't even know that whole Air America period. But
yeah. Sometimes my comments come from the history that I watched this person a long time ago. And the fact that they sound exactly the same now as they did then is evidence that like I'm glad it's why I left them behind because
they're just not integrating new information and changing, just kind of staying in that same.
Because they'll encounter people who say like we can move further left, and that's kind of Jimmy Dore shtick. But it's like a lot of people don't let him be more radical. Like they argue him out of it or something like that. Or they give him so much pushback and grief that he just goes mental, just trying to force the vote, kind of thing. And so since that was such a debacle of a, I don't know, campaign, it was like it's just so pathetic. Like when you do a media campaign, and it's just like my campaign failed because it was just media. I didn't actually convince anyone in online media, which is like, well, you were never going to win in the first place. What would winning look like? Enough like the Twitter, like left Twitter, can force AOC to do something. what kind of expectations do you have? Like that's
I know.
it's its own delusional
Yeah.
state. So that's what
Well,
that's what people were really pissed at Door about. It wasn't really. I mean, to me, again, my steel manning is always like, what are the things people are really arguing about? To me, it's like, are people arguing about like holding the like actually fighting within the Democratic Party, you know, and being oppositional as Democrats? Or like acting, or you're independent, but you're acting. You want to act on the Democrats as if you're part of it. So there's that mistake, or that delusion, and then there's delusion of. So there's multiple levels of delusion with Jimmy Dore, or the force the vote campaign.
Force the vote crowd. Yeah.
And the third one being the delusion that like a media campaign is as effective as a actual political campaign.
I know.
Which involves door knocking and winning offices. But like I guess the online left, they think that winning the squad seats was the electoral victory. And so we need to do something with that. That victory needs to mean something outside of the squad being the next generation of Bernie Sanders, because we have Bernie Sanders for 30 years and it doesn't do anything as far as, I mean, having a real left, because that's what everyone's really craving, a real left. And
absolutely,
and that's not going to happen through the squad or online.
No. I keep hoping that this recent drive to unionize across all these industries is going to, form the basis to actually have a real left at some point.
It's a real strategy, and I think it's finally getting around to like what actually worked the first time when there was a left movement. It was when there was enough unionization. So So I think it's a positive direction.
I agree. I absolutely
agree. After 40 years of trying to have media and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
With unlimited data, and it's hooked up to an XPAL 18,000
still doing texting.
milliamp battery.
That's why we stopped. That's why we paused.
Interesting. I had no idea. I for some reason I presumed you guys had a camera rig, but just because the quality is that good.
Yeah, I mean,
the smartphones were still pretty.
I feel like I'm doing a commercial here.
Yeah, they were
indeed. 8 megapixel 1080p.
I'm gonna fast forward. I can't.
Though the first
iPhone.
No,
I am absolutely not.
Came out in 07.
All right. Well, sorry. Now tell me also how this evolved with you and Henry, because when I first started watching it, Henry seemed to be sort of the correspondent. And then at one point, you guys had multiple cameras going, the other 99 and the other 99 too.
The other 99.
Is it just a question of who's available
this is where
that
day? Those jokes that South Park made.
Who's able to get down there?
The 7% have broken off from the 99%.
I don't remember that. That's funny.
It was their Occupy satire episode where, to me, it wasn't like, it didn't insult me. Which was a plus, because it was more it was just making fun of the slogan. It was just like we took the Matt and Trey took the slogan and like, how can we make jokes about this? Like, it's because there was rumors or existing splinting off of the movement, or movements. They have splits. So it's like, how would the 99% split if it's supposed to be about everyone's in except the top 10. Top one. And it's like, well, the 6% are fighting with the 20%, about who's in the 99.
And that's funny. That's funny because that actually gets at that left truism that we're always infighting and splintering off. So
and
it's actually a good joke.
they do another good joke, which I actually think I have the audio of. I'm gonna maybe use it in a montage where Butters is like by the way, the movement is just two people. It's like Butters and someone else, and Butters goes to like half of the the movement has taken a break to go to the bathroom. They're making a movement. It sounds like quite a large movement in there.
My God.
And so Butters comes out like, Butters, how was the movement? Oh, the movement was great. Toilet humor, which is their
yeah.
So,
That's how they.
but I
made
liked.
their
I didn't think
fun
it was
of it.
bad. It didn't insult me because
No,
I was waiting to
yeah.
be insulted. I was the leftist,
Sure.
like, oh, I'm so insulted by everything that I want everyone to be on my side. I did feel that way. I'm like, why?
Uh-huh.
Everyone who does not support this movement is just stupid and reactionary, and they're like the enemy because they just don't get how broken everything is, which is true. Still believe, but yeah, but I'm not like real people. We're not straw men. It's like I can still.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Sense of humor about ourselves. All right.
What are the inner workings?
When it first started, the sort of dynamic we had was that I was just handling the technology, and Henry was actually giving the reports. But as I'm the one who set it up and knew how to make it work, with this action happening, especially the Oakland Solidarity March that we were just talking about, it was hard for us to stay together because you have just, we had 2,000 people in the street. I'm running full speed to try and film it, and Henry gets lost in the crowd. And I was sort of, put in the spot to take over the narration.
That sounds familiar.
And it, just with Tuesday, with the eviction,
we couldn't be coordinated.
Henry and
we
I
were
were
a team.
just not. We were at two different meetings. I was at the Spokes Council to see what that was going on. Spokes Council is an organizational system for Occupy Wall Street. So when the eviction started, I was by myself, and I had to do the reporting on my own. And so with the success from that, and everyone sort of clamored to keep the stream going, Henry decided to use a second channel for the other 99. And so we actually ended up with two, with multi-view from, on the ground. You can actually switch back and forth when you're on our channel.
Multi-view.
And you,
Real innovation
your
talk,
feed,
jeez.
I believe it was on the.
Well, again, Sam's asking
certainly
about
last
it.
Thursday.
I know,
Sam's
but-
interested for some reason about the fact that they had they were being meta. They had one stream
Yes.
going and another going. So you got
Whiz bang.
maybe because it was like a situation where you don't often or before get like two angles on a live event happening. I mean, you can if you have multiple channels there,
Yeah.
But what made it special, I suppose, is that and this is again, maybe this is when Tim Pool really got his start, is that it wasn't during the movement, but it was during the evictions of the movement. Only the movement was ending.
Oh, so he wasn't even there from the beginning.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I mean,
Oh,
Sam has him on because it was the other 99's live streams that were there during the
I see.
evictions.
I
There was
see.
no other coverage, no one else. I mean, it happened very quickly, and it also wasn't announced. I mean, there was one eviction announced, and that's where it was kind of felt like a win because we got basically an extra week because it was a week later that the real eviction happened. Lulled us in a false sense of security. We dropped our defenses a bit.
Yeah.
Because the city was basically telling us that, like, okay, we're not going to evict you.
And then
But
they
this
did,
was, but then maybe it was also a mix of, a lot of cities saying they weren't going to evict the encampments. But Obama got on the phone. He's a very persuasive guy. He's very persuasive. And well, rather, it wasn't just Obama himself, but the White House coordinated a mass eviction that, like, saying to all the cities, you need to evict these protesters. It's very, very swept under the. I mean, lefties commented and progressive outlets commented on it, but it's not kept in people. It didn't keep in people's minds that this was something Obama did that, like, we should be upset at him for, because the Republicans are just so much worse. That's always the case with all the fake lefties, is that the right is so bad that you just have to not be mad at Obama or the Dems for anything, which drives me nuts. It feels like gaslighting,
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
like you're saying it doesn't matter, but this is something they did to me.
Right.
Obviously the Republicans do things that harm me, but again, it's like when there's two groups that are harming me, maybe in different ways, that doesn't mean that one is better than the other.
No. Yeah, and if one is claiming to be on your side, but then, every time the camera's shut off, they quietly shuffle you out of the way, then, yeah, it tends to sting. All right, moving on. Oh, wait, comment coming in? Reimagining of Thanos turned him into some kind of sideways eco-terrorist. Yeah. True enough.
But it was like
It's basically,
Malthusian, not
even
like
Malthusian, yeah.
an eco terrorist is to like a hero to me. Like there's no bad eco terrorist to me in real life. I mean, because in real life, the Earth First group are eco terrorists, and so on. They're like the actual eco terrorists, right? And there's just no comparison because real eco terrorists sabotage, equipment and block industrial roads and do some sabotage. They're not murdering nobody, or whatever, or attacking
Right.
anyone or whatever.
Yeah.
It's always a fiction of what an eco terrorist is in people's heads, and not a
Right.
real one. Um, Even though in real life, when it is real life, it's like, oh, you hurt property. That makes you, that's a total villain. I can't stand for that because if this property can be harmed in the name of protecting the environment, then that goes for my Hummer or my way of life. Which,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Hey, yeah, I'm on your side, man. Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, so that's why
oh,
you said sideways.
sideways.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what you meant.
gotcha. Yeah, I would
Oh,
say more
sideways
like
as in skewed and fictional.
yeah.
Fictionalized.
Yeah, I'd say maybe eco-fascist would be closer to how Thanos came out.
Definitely. Actually, yeah. Yeah, I think that's where the miscommunication happened, where like fans could develop of like maybe they're just they're fascist and they don't know it. And so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
identify with Thanos and his eco-fascism. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Americans are fascist. I mean, we know this.
Yes.
So
Quite an affinity for that strain.
and the Avengers aren't really that much better. They don't represent democracy to me. So
No, it's just vigilante command and
yeah,
control. You know,
even if
based
they're
on some
accountable
vague.
by the UN, which is obviously very light,
Yeah.
but an arm of the UN that's where I'm like, you don't see it in DC. In DC, the Justice League is like its own NGO, and
Hmm.
they don't have a treaty with the UN. They just like collaborate. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
No, they do. There is a charter. There is a
Oh,
charter
okay.
that they basically you have nation states that say like we don't allow the Justice League, and if they don't allow them, the Justice League does not intervene. They don't like,
Really
at least not publicly, but
interesting.
um, they don't act in a like Superman is not coming in this swoop.
Huh.
Um, at least they tiptoe and whatever, and they're careful.
That's
But
interesting. That's a lot more
the
dimension than I'm used to getting from
yeah, and
the DC
Young
universe.
Justice delves into this because Young Justice is crazy and as fictional as DC universe stuff is. It always feels more real to me than Marvel stuff because at least in DC universe, governments seem to act more realistically, where they either see the Justice League as a threat
Mm-hmm.
or they're wary of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like they recognize the good, so as a crisis the crisis response force.
Mm-hmm.
So not the police, because that's the thing. The Justice League doesn't, especially when it's acting globally, they're not acting like world. They're not being world police. They're crisis response actors, because it's always like, or it's they work like Interpol,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a legal framework that like allows them to do that, to be like an Interpol, because as long as they like when they bust up the human trafficking ring, as long as they then call the local authorities to like bring them in, they have a working relationship, which is something the Avengers didn't do. They just show up and they don't tell anyone, and that's where the treaty needs to happen. But it's always in the background that like it's
Yeah.
it's not a plot line that this framework was drawn up. It's just like you'll just have it be part of the dialogue of like how things work. So it's just like it doesn't go deep into it because it doesn't have to, because it's just assumed. It just assumes, and that's why I feel smarter with DC is like DC, because it just assumes I know how NGOs work, or that that Interpol's a thing, or that the UN wouldn't stand for this or something, or that the UN is in Young Justice, the UN is like what's fictional about it is that the UN is actually this world governing body, and that through political machinations and being rich, Lex Luthor becomes the general secretary of the UN.
Ooh.
And this actually puts him in a position where it's like, oh, he runs the world. He controls. He actually rules the world.
Actually, got
as
got
an antagonist to the as a real antagonist to the Justice League. He's not just a nationalistic player. And he's there because through his money and whatever. He's not funding wars. He's actually making peace, even though he's funding both sides. But he's like, well, I'm creating parity. Whatever. It was something I liked about Young Justice.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
In DC
Thursday was picked up by multiple sort of mainstream media outlets, corporate media outlets.
Yeah, Tuesday as well. We were on Al Jazeera, Time.com. I also heard that we were on Reuters. It's a huge list that everybody was. Huffington Post is one.
Did.
They were just. We were the primary source at that point.
An origin story.
He was
so
the
what are you
primary
doing now?
source.
I mean, how do you support yourself doing this? It seems to me that you do it almost every day. I mean, how do you support yourself doing this?
Well, initially I was
son,
living off of my savings, but people had made contributions to the other 99 since day one, and that provided us with
Not
the
the
resources
Occupy Media
to be on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, when he says savings, I would bet that would be from his short-lived skateboarding career, because I think he probably did save some up from that. Because I don't think his family necessarily was all that rich. I mean, at least the way he talks about it, they came from a pretty poor part of Chicago and stuff,
I guess, but I guess can't say anything about his family. Can only project what to do, because that's what he does.
Yeah. True enough.
Maybe he is really white, working class white.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And his family weren't bourgeois enough to no, you are going to stay in school. You are going to go to college. This is the way things are because this is what we've done. I mean, if his parents were high school dropouts, or maybe they only had a high school education, but what did they do? We don't. I need to know what they did for a living and whatever, and why they
talking about his background.
Why would they would just let him drop out and not even not even homeschool himself?
That I don't know. It must have had something to do with his skateboarding career taking off or something like that.
As long as he's successful in this way, it's allowed, the whole I'm going to make a career out of playing video games.
Yeah.
He was living the dream, and that's kind of where everyone wants to be Tim Pool, because he's super rich by doing absolutely nothing,
having nothing of substance to offer.
Or rather, he didn't have to do what everyone else has to do to be quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
Truly the the alternative life.
But he certainly left the.
So I guess this comes back around to how this was his claim to fame. I guess our live stream wasn't operating, or it was, but it didn't get picked up by the mainstream outlets.
Must be.
His did, because the other 99 was, well, like I said, they were better at getting more social media spread. They had learned, I guess, Tim learned how to do this as a skater boy, and the other three guys. Because I didn't watch their streams. I didn't know about them. I didn't care about them. and then suddenly, but maybe at the time, maybe I just wasn't thinking about it because obviously I had other things on my goddamn mind,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
evictions that were happening and what's next, and the meetings and the meetings and the
right.
meetings,
Yeah.
and also my goddamn 6-year thesis project. I was
It's kind of a
still in
big deal, yeah.
school, doing the
Yeah.
last year of studio architecture school. Not a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Not something to sneeze at. It's not just
Not at
writing
all.
papers,
No.
but there were
No.
also papers rewritten.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a poor first semester, better second semester. Because the first semester I was literally like, I'm going to put in some minimal effort. I don't care. This is more important to me. I already know I'm not getting a job as soon as school ends, so I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I work hard?
True enough. True
But
enough.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was just the year before I went back to grad school, in fact, 2011. So, yep, I was concerned with that at the time. So yeah, Ustream would have been pretty new. I think I was vaguely familiar with it, but I certainly didn't follow him back then. I didn't follow any live streams back then. So
I had Ustream as a bookmark for quite a few years. Then I realized I wasn't using it at all.
yeah, yeah.
But Albany had a Ustream account, but we weren't using it, and I didn't
Oh, okay.
care or know. I didn't know how to use it effectively. It was,
Sure.
again, I was too busy organizing these and not doing the media for them. You need a dedicated person
Right.
to do it.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
and that's where the other 99 were just doing their gonzo journalism.
Yeah, Gonzo.
It's just the name. I just can't get over the name.
It's a really crappy name.
It's a crappy name to me. It was crappy because it's like other 99. It confused me. I'm like, are
It is
they
confusing.
affiliated? They're trying to be with us, but they're not. And or
It just sounds like, yeah, the alternative to the alternative, which but
because
even
when
still
else
doesn't make sense.
as Tim Pool's answer, like, no, I'm not with Occupy. I'm there to be for transparency. I'm not going to say for what, but I mean, again, it's a general value. I value transparency.
Right.
For
Yeah.
what? For who? Doesn't matter.
To what ends? Yeah.
Doesn't think about to what end. Doesn't think about it. It's just a very moralistic. Like, I like good things because they're
Yes.
good.
I enjoy freedoms and such. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Free speech.
Yeah. Let's
Providing
wrap up
this
this
coverage.
video. He's still not saying
And
much
with the recent
interesting.
exposure we've got since the eviction to the sort of reclamation of the park, our donations have increased significantly.
And so, what's next for you guys? Are you continue to do this coverage? Are you are you helping? You know, I've watched other streams, frankly, and I've just wished that you guys had trained them, because I think what you both do quite well, from my experience at least viewing, is you are fairly measured in your coverage. You're fairly careful to clarify when you've witnessed something or when you are, sourcing the information you get, so that we know the LRAD sticks out in my mind, that you had multiple sources telling you that they had seen it, and you made it clear that that was the case. And I wonder if you guys have been in touch with other streamers around the country to help advise them on how to go about approaching it. Has there been any conversations like that, or is it just you're operating on your own?
Well, we don't coordinate with other teams, but I have given a lot of technical advice as to how I do the broadcast. Most of the other teams use the live stream program. We use Ustream, and Ustream.tv actually has the mobile app where you broadcast right from your phone. Mm-hmm. And live stream, actually, you'll see these teams walking around with laptops and webcams with external batteries and hotspots. So they don't have the
That's how our media team actually.
Now, for sort of the narration, the reporting,
because they're
spoke with
professionals.
With Plaat from Global Rev, and he said, what you guys do is exactly what everyone should.
Well, walking around with a laptop, I don't remember.
You report a narration of what's happening,
I can imagine
so people can get a better understanding of it.
I don't think it was the media.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and So we can expect more from you guys in the future, yes?
Yeah, I plan on
Oh,
being in
yeah.
Oakland on December 12th, where they've actually
Unfortunately,
planned to
yes.
shut down all of the
Expect a
ports.
lot more from them.
Yeah.
A lot more. Oh yeah. No
Oh.
fucking idea how
Mhm.
much we're gonna get from them in the future.
Yeah. Oh God.
Down memory lane.
Right. But yeah, again, he didn't really say anything. He had no thoughts on Occupy. He had no analysis. He
Oh, that's his always thing. I mean, but Sam was
yeah,
asking very specific, direct questions, and Sam was answering them
true.
for the most part. It's just like they were boring.
True enough.
They weren't that well. Actually, what you're commenting on is that he answered them in a very boring fashion. He could have been more spicy, could have added
Sure.
anecdotes, but he was just very. This is always Tim's way
Uh-huh.
of just giving like a answering things like a 6-year-old, like this happened and this, and then I did that, and I'm
And
doing
then
it
I
like
did
that,
it.
and
Yeah.
like, are you coordinating? No, not really.
No, I
It's
don't
just,
really talk to anybody else. You know, just like, what?
I give some technical advice when people message me, and just whatever comes along, go with the flow. So, since
Yeah, what would
God,
you-
that took an hour and a half.
Yeah, that took a while.
How about next we do the let's see, unless you have other ideas, but
You want the
unless you want to
laboratory
cover
in the
his
desert?
actual. I was thinking actually the converting America from capitalism to communism and democracy 4.
All right.
It's a longer one, but as like when I watched it, you can skip around. Just watch the first 5 minutes, then the last 5 minutes.
Sure thing.
Now, the entertainment value here is that the person doing it is making puns the whole way that we will actually find funny.
Oh, okay, good.
Now, the caveat with any kind of gaming, which kind of says something about the general post late capitalist imagination, is that it can't imagine a future outside of statism and social democracy.
Gotcha.
But where Democracy 4 doesn't kind of, you'll see with the how it handles things, but it's like the major conceit is how politics works is that you start the game as being the leader of the country, even when you don't have mass support already. It just said it just says, oh, your Communist Party was elected, and you're at like
Okay.
10% are socialists.
Interesting mechanic there.
Yeah. Well, it's an oversight of how does politics really work, and that there's no game, or would it be fun? It's a question, open question. Would it be fun to have a simulator or a game where you are doing revolution? There really isn't any. When it comes to society or city builder or political management thing, it's always post-revolution. It's never during the revolution or organizing it, because that can't be, or it isn't represented. Either it can't be represented because the politics there would be too real, or it's considered boring, and being in charge is what's fun. So you just have to skip the messy part where you do democracy and organizing and whatever. But you skip to the good part, because there's another bunch of games I've bought. One's called, let me get to it. Let's see. Well, there's City State 2, which I started playing, but Rogue State Revolution. It's called Rogue State Revolution. Okay. And again, it starts with you've completed the revolution. And at least in that game, you're kind of locked into what kind of economics you have. But similar, like in City State, it's like SimCity or City Skylines, but it has a political aspect in that you do, when you have the prerequisites, you can do legislation. You can pick legislation, and you move along a 2-axis political grid, with one axis being economic freedom, and the other being civil liberties. And when your civil liberties are maxed out, it's all utopian. And based on freedom, you're either a liberal utopia or a communist utopia.
Ah.
So it puts it's really simplified. Obviously, it's just two axes, but and it's more than what other games do. But it assumes that the economy is still the actually capitalistic, or well, it's not actually capitalistic, I suppose, but it's working under the assumption that the economy's purpose is to grow. And so what you're really managing is economic growth. And there's city state is actually a bit cool because it's including inflation and unemployment and how these things affect each other. But economic growth is always going to happen, and that's fueled by the immigration comes in, because it's always like assumed like economy grows because you have more people, not just because the economy can grow and it's going to go to the rich or not, or it's going to be distributed based on the policies you pick. But that's City State I started playing. But again, there's no real goal, just to grow. And until what? Like, because it's the immigration settings are such that it's like people come based on whether they're coming from the undeveloped world, developing, or developed. So it splits the world into those three categories, which is problem two. But it's like that's the purpose for people from these areas to come to your city state. And there's no real goal except to, like most, to just fill out the map, have a high enough population to meet the prerequisites to build the really cool buildings.
Cool.
Which to me isn't worth it. Because to
yeah,
me,
it's not, it should not maybe be your end goal.
The goal is to build a communist utopia, I suppose. But
right.
If that's
have everyone be happy.
Done through growing the economy, then really the game is just dangest.
Yeah.
And it's forcing me, or it's telling me that like the way I'm going to play is to be a dangest. I got to develop the economy enough so then I can pay for national health care or whatever.
Yeah.
But
that's
social democracy stuff, though. Status stuff, not worker ownership. Because that is, I mean, maybe I haven't gotten to those settings yet, but like the scale is economic freedom. And economic freedom is measured in how capitalist it is.
Exactly.
So, or rather how private it is actually. Sorry, no, private versus
how
public.
privatized.
So if there's public regulation, it's just in communism is when there's government regulation, working off of that. Now, Democracy 4, better because it's literally the gameplay is just policies. And the communism is full nationalization of the economy. So let's have some fun and listen to this guy. This guy does playthroughs, and he's pretty entertaining.
Awesome. All right, we'll take a look.
He makes puns along the way.
Gaming enthusiasts, my name is llzbohd, and in today's challenge video, we are going to play Democracy 4 and transform the corporate states of America into a Marxist proletarian paradise. Democracy 4 is a strategic political simulator that allows you to play as a leader of one of 10 democratic nations, guide socioeconomic policy, and forge your own political path. Each of the 10 starting states are unique and face challenging starting situations, like Japan's debt crisis, Italy's massive mafia, or the US obesity epidemic, and are all aligned on a political compass, divided between socialism and capitalism on one axis, and liberalism and conservatism on the other. Your actions as president or prime minister directly influence all aspects of your nation, but if you anger your constituents or make changes too quickly, you'll more than likely end up losing your re-election or getting assassinated, which will end your campaign. But before we get started on our communist campaign, this video is sponsored by Positech Games, the developers and creators of Democracy 4. To begin our campaign, which is the principal currency used in-game. In effect, our political capital is increased each turn by the loyalty of our cabinet members, the popularity of our government, the dominance of our party in previous elections, and from emergency powers which can be enacted during disasters. The main way for us to accrue political power early on will be from our ministers, and, since many of them are loyal, will automatically grant us political power each
Just
turn.
explaining the gameplay.
These ministers can of course be fired for a cost, or for free if their loyalty is low
Of course,
enough.
now that he's
But
done a
before you
playthrough of
pull
how
this
I
trump
would play
card,
the game,
you should
I
know
don't
that
have to play the game anymore.
this action will lower every other minister's loyalty, and thus your overall political capital per turn. And speaking of political capital, it's time we use ours to defund the military and abandon our ridiculously expensive foreign policy. The road to socialism can take many different angles, and we will use our first quarter to abandon private...
Was it supposed to be an angles pun there?
Oh yeah.
Many different angles, but
I actually didn't catch it until like I read the comments and somebody mentioned it.
Oh man.
Because
you're right.
the closed captioning,
I do enjoy that.
The closed captioning didn't spell it with an E, so.
Right.
But no, that's the kind of humor he goes with, and he's very, It's cute because he's knowledgeable enough to like know what jokes to make. Like I'm comparing this to a European Universalis 4 playthrough where he starts as a stateless in southern Vietnam, basically, and it's like, I'm going to make an anarchist Asia, basically, conquer Asia. And so he goes through a very long playthrough of the game, and he kind of does the same like pun-filled like explanation of what he's doing, step by step. Like, now we have to do this to our neighbors. Anyway, you'll see.
That's funny.
Very, very matter.
Ties prison in
fact.
favor of community policing and
So
subsidize our
like,
stockades. Crushing capitalism
Not a
takes
level.
time, and with over 84% of our population subscribing to this view, many will be displeased by our actions, but so be it. Our core constituents, socialists, form only 15% of the American population, and will have to make subtle changes to convert our crony capitalists into proper proletarians without anyone noticing. Since we've cut our, quote, defense budget, unquote,
they would notice,
we freed
so,
up the
like,
means of production to
the game
pursue
is
social
unrealistic
spending,
anyway.
and will use our
Yeah.
political power to increase state funding to technology schools, subsidize the public broadcasting service, and ramp up federal science funding to offset research lost in dismantling the military-industrial complex. But someone has to pay for social services, and thus the capital gains tax rate is increased to fund the expansion of USPS. The effects of eliminating
Hell yeah.
private prisons and defunding our armed forces have resulted in lower GDP and prison overcrowding, and we need a solution. Our administration abolishes water cannons and tear gas, which conservatives hate, and their invisible hand forces us to appease them with the welfare fraud department policy. In an effort to turn our GDP frown upside down, we mandate a telecommuting policy to improve production and implement Labor Day as a federal holiday for all private and public employees. The good news is that prisons are no longer overcrowded, but women are still suffering sexual harassment at the hands of capitalist inequality. In an effort to right this wrong, our administration sets about subsidizing technology
It's such a
schools
weird tone
and
because it's
abolishes
like,
select.
in a way, he's saying
Yeah.
he's saying everything like it's sarcastic, but it can be taken, but it's written straight. Like, this is the way I would actually
Right.
be, like, explaining things, you and me, right? The way
Straight-
we explain what we do.
Straightforward explaining,
And-
yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it's tongue in cheek. Like, he doesn't
right,
really mean
yeah.
it, but this
Yeah.
is how he's playing. This is how he's doing it. So, and in the game, it is working. So, because the
This
game
would
is
be a fun one.
Because Democracy 4 is at least set that, like, yeah, if it recognizes or it's coded that, yeah, when we say our policies would do X in the game, they do. It isn't like a straw man socialism or a straw man where, like, if you do the socialist stuff, that it crashes, it wouldn't work. You can't do it, you lose, or something. No, it's not really.
This would be an interesting game to actually play on stream sometime. Like, once in a while, I do like doing gaming streams. And maybe even if we had enough people, we could have everyone democratically vote. for what policies to put in place.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm for that.
Active schools
have to
entirely
buy it,
to
though.
foster socialist
Yeah,
solidarity.
yeah, I looked it up on Steam.
But
It's not that bad.
solidarity
It's
doesn't
like
end
20,
with our
25,
own
$26.
species, and in our quarterly report, we opt to implement regulations to curb factory farming. Of course, humans also deserve dignity, and our next project is to fund state housing and provide all low to middle income citizens stimulus checks via helicopter money, while raising taxes on capital gains to offset our spending deficit. With our GDP and popularity increasing and our poverty and deficit decreasing, the time has come to cut the military once again. This, of course, angers the capitalist class, who loves to profit off of death's destruction, but we are quick to appease them with mandatory Spanish language lessons and increases in our science funding to improve our
What's
popularity
interesting
and
about
maintain our...
the setup of the game is that it almost recognizes that the military is just a GDP growth and jobs machine, because there's no, like, geopolitics doesn't factor into the gameplay at all.
Huh, yeah.
So it's like, what do you have the brief for? Is it for, fighting, or is it for global
Defending our
security,
freedom.
or maintaining the global trade that is required for GDP growth or any basic services, basically? Like, if we didn't protect the shipping lanes, would we be able to import the things needed to do national health care? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that
Game doesn't quite address, huh?
No, but conservatives believe they have the answer for. Like, we need the big military because we couldn't do anything else if we didn't have it.
Right, yeah. Yep.
Or if we weren't protecting the shipping lanes, or protecting
the border, yeah. Yeah.
Maintaining control over oil reserves.
Sure.
our technological advantage. But the polls are not looking good, and our ministers are openly disloyal, which will force us to fire our socialist tax minister and liberal welfare minister and replace them with capitalists to appease some of our more counter-revolutionary constituents. If we don't pass popular policies soon, we're going to lose the election, and, in our third quarter, we pass university grants for poorer families to win over the middle class. The effects are immediate and greatly increase our GDP, lower our unemployment, and our popularity surges from 30 to over 80% approval. Our priority is to build class consciousness, and thus we pass plastic taxes to fund subsidized school meals for poorer pupils, and pass free parenting classes for the proletarian masses. We ensure that everyone is able to benefit from their own concrete communist crib, and also subsidize the production of public libraries. One of our capitalist donors to our Communist Party suggests implementing a federal right to digital privacy, and we set out to finish Fox News by subsidizing socialist state programming. But in order to pay for the people's prosperity, we have to implement increases to property taxes and pass taxation policies on summer homes, ultimately allowing us to improve health standards for our food production. We're finally out of the jungle, but to truly set our sights upston the air, we need to nationalize American Airlines, nationalize and secularize the YMCA, and force the proceeds.
Wait, what? Nationalize American Airlines? What's the pun? I'm not. It's not registering.
Oh no! The word Upson.
Oh, Upson.
Like
Still
Upton.
Not getting it.
Did he maybe meant Upton, like Upton St. Clair?
Oh, of course. Yeah, you're definitely right on that.
But
yeah,
he said Upson.
The jungle.
So.
Yeah. I guess that's why I didn't.
Yeah, but here's the first policy where he actually nationalizes something. So, this is where, well, when you get to the end of term 1, you can skip to the last term. So,
okay,
that's where it gets
of inheritance directly into the state. Capitalists hate this one little trick, and soon our credit rating is lowered, but our popularity remains high, and we're popular enough to enact meaningful change. In fact, we're so popular that we can hold off on passing policies for half a year to save up the political capital needed to extend our term limit from 2 to 3. Although this isn't inherently democratic, it has 100% support and is passed with thunderous applause. But we are nearing the election season, and it's time for us to make a pledge, but it isn't of allegiance to our flag. To appease liberals and socialists alike, we pledge to secularize our schools and fulfill our promise within the same month by banning the Bible and promoting evolutionary theory in the classroom. It's the final countdown, and it's time
Bible's
to go to
banned.
the polls.
Just like
Despite half of our
Outright
population
banned,
not
just like
voting,
I was
as
afraid.
is American tradition, our Socialist Party won with a supermajority of 90%.
So a pause for a
In
moment.
only 4
So this
years,
is the first time he mentions that the party in the game that for socialists, I guess, is the Party for Socialism and Liberation,
Yeah, I see that now.
PSL, which is a
Yeah.
real party.
It sure is.
I'm not sure if something that the programmers picked, and like if there's like a bit of humor to this, picking
Picking a party they think will never actually.
the small. Well, it's the
When-
smallest one. It's the most
Yeah.
divisive.
Yeah.
I guess, but like, why the PSL? Why not
Yeah.
the Equality Socialist or Socialist Equality Party? Why not? Like, why
Yeah.
did they pick PSL? I'm just bringing up the question because I just don't have an answer, and
It's interesting.
yeah, why PSL?
Interesting.
Because it's a real party. They didn't make up a name. I kind of wish they did, but I mean, they didn't. They're obviously Republican Party or Democratic Party. And it's interesting that even with the socialists being like the major the player in this, it's still a two-party system because the choice for the electorate is between the PSL and the Republican, and it's definitely a case that if the Democrats were ever replaced with the Socialist Party, then it would be a matter of, well, the socialists are the lesser evil. I don't like everything they do.
Absolutely.
But they're not the Republicans.
A clear distinction in every way.
Which is the argument that progressives make about the Democrats. If the Democrats were wholly social Democrats, then all those moderates that, they're going to, like, the argument's always they're going to leave and vote Republican rather than voting for social Democrats. Because they don't see social Democrats as a lesser evil, but the evil. Or in the contest between neo-fascists and social democrats, neo-fascists or Christian fascists are the lesser evil.
Yeah, because it's keeping closer to
Social
the status
Democrat.
quo. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is quite interesting. It's still a two-party system in this game.
Managed to reduce crime,
It's the only way
carbon
maybe it could
emissions,
work.
and our currency's strength.
I guess so.
While
Yeah, maybe the
increasing
mechanics
the
would be too
nation's
difficult
lifespan,
otherwise.
health, gender equality, our
Or
environment,
maybe because it's
and
America.
much
Like
more.
if you pick Italy, is it parliamentary? Are there multiple parties?
Ooh, that's a good question. That'd be fun to
So
find
we have
out.
to. I guess we have to get the game.
I guess that's it. We're gonna have to break down and buy it. I think I have.
So anyway, click the
Yeah, to
final
the last
term.
chapter here.
Final term, yeah. No, not the overview, just the
20
final term.
Oh.
Final term there. This is after 20 years. Okay.
It is now 2041, and it's been 20 years since our party has first assumed power. Our massive budget surplus has been stockpiled for one reason, and now it's time to unleash the Yang Gang and universalize the means of income. UBI only costs $427 billion per quarter, or over $1.7 trillion per year. And with our last election polling our population at 517 million people, or almost twice our initial starting population, every communist citizen is now entitled to $3,285 per year for doing absolutely nothing. But capitalist creditors hate this one simple socialist trick, and, with a deficit of over $380 billion, we'll need to raise taxes to offset our utopian UBI. In socialist America, God is dead due to state secularity, but it's not too late for us to raise the corpse of Christianity and tax it to the max, squeezing over $74 billion from our monotheistic minority.
There we go.
Changes to tax law now ensure that individual inheritance falls to the state, private property and sales tax is taxed to the max, and the military is defunded to serve only a ceremonial role. For communism to truly work, we set about squeezing out any remaining capital from the rich, while also instituting a tax on cannabis and cryptocurrencies. Better slurp that dip, capitalist coin holder. While these taxes might seem extreme to anarcho-capitalists, the state and automated AI provides for everything our population could possibly need. Universalizing everything has led to a utopian union of socialist states, and contested elections are a thing of the past. Our sixth term concludes with over 99% of the popular vote and 80% turnout, relegating the Republican Party to the dustbin of history. Literally every single segment of society are card-carrying communists, and even the wealthy and capitalists are voting against their interests. It's time now for us to see what 24 years of socialism and liberalism have done to the USA. In 2045,
So that was the final term was
socialist states of
just
America.
doing UBI. So the four
Yeah.
terms before that, which I watched, was him basically like doing a spree of nationalizing everything because it actually gives you the
okay.
option of doing that.
Interesting.
All the while, he's also doing all of the automation policies.
Yeah, I heard him mention that.
Like,
What does that entail?
Self-driving cars, automation
Ah.
and software, and all these other things. So
Okay.
GDP continues to rise, even if unemployment is also high or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he does a lot of videos like that. He's kind of a
Yeah, that's fun. I like it.
gamer streamer. And he does all the grand strategy games and stuff. And you know, he's funded by basically the fact that they are basically big ads for the game.
Sure.
as
sure.
they're
Makes sense.
semi-effective and that we're talking about getting it. So
Yeah. Yeah,
We've
I definitely would
been played.
would
man.
buy this
We've been
game.
played.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that was the long one. That's good. So either we do Tim Pool for the rest of the stream and pick like a random video from the week, or we do the 5 reasons why there isn't a housing shortage.
Are
you interested in that one?
Yeah.
I won't do
Yeah,
too
let's
much
do-
commentary on that one since we've done bits of that. And this is Belinda Carr, the Indian woman who lives not in India.
Oh, I remember
but,
her. Yes.
But this is when I said like, oh, this doesn't sound like her. This is a weird version of her videos. This is her on point. This is like what I usually think of her.
I see. All right, bringing it up.
To find housing.
Where is the supply?
Very limited supply.
The housing shortage, housing crisis.
Long-term shortage situation. Over the last 10 years, we've had 5.8 million homes that we needed to build that we just haven't built.
Housing is a basic human need, but a lack of affordable housing
she
to
starts with
buy
that
or rent
base
is fueling a housing crisis here in the States. Research claims that the US needed 3.8 million homes in 2019, which grew to 5.2 million homes in 2021. Other surveys like this one by the National Association of Realtors claims that we need 6.8 million homes.
We can trust
The
them.
construction industry is under intense scrutiny and criticism. We're constantly being told to build faster, cheaper, and in larger quantities. Traditional construction crews can't keep up with demand while also battling price swings, supply chain issues, and inflation. We're being told to frantically build, and build more. We've turned to 3D concrete printing, modular construction, temporary shelters, and more in the hopes of finding a solution. Desperate families with limited housing options have turned to tiny homes, ADUs or additional dwelling units, and in extreme cases, homelessness. Cities like San Francisco have become unrecognizable in under a decade. During a recent visit to the Bay Area, I was shocked to see every street lined with tents, RVs, cars missing wheels, and makeshift shelters. State governments are pouring billions into temporary housing shelters that are doing little to nothing to solve the problem.
Because it's not
seems
public
like
housing.
a new article is released daily about the
It's not public housing. That's the short of it. These are like, they're meant to be temporary, they're homeless shelters, they're like,
okay.
where it's a homeless crisis, not a housing crisis. Anyway,
the lack of housing and inventory shortage. We are so caught up in blaming the construction industry that we haven't paused to ask if there really is a housing crisis or if the entire situation is artificial. An analysis of real housing and population data reveals a very scary trend towards oversupply of housing. There are so many parallels between today's landscape and the housing bubble of 2005, and we are doing nothing to stop it. In this video, we're going to look at 5 reasons why there isn't a housing shortage in the States. First up, declining population growth. Up until the Great Recession of 2008, the US birth rate hovered between 65 and 70 births per 1,000 women. However, after 2008, the birth rate never recovered. As of 2020, the US birth rate was 55.8 births, a decline of almost 20% from 2007. This can be attributed to lower fertility rates and couples prioritizing career and financial security over children. At the same time, the number of deaths has spiked considerably. In 2005, the US saw 2.4 million deaths per year. That number is now around 3.1 million. It is unfortunately expected to increase as the baby boomer generation ages. This graph shows the natural increase in population, which is births minus deaths. As this continues to decline, so does international migration. While the US saw over 1 million immigrants move to the country in 2016, the number has now dropped to less than 500,000. This significant drop can be due to strict immigration policies, processing backlogs, and the pandemic. According to the US Census Bureau, all these factors caused the country's population to grow by fewer than 1 million people in 2021, slower than during the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 and World War I. In nearly every article about a housing crisis and inventory shortage, we're shown this graph on the number of housing permits issued per year. It tells us that new construction dropped drastically after the Great Recession and never fully recovered. Permits for single-family homes declined from a peak of 1.7 million in 2005 all the way down to 400,000 in 2010, a massive 70% drop. Even in 2020, the number of permits issued was only 1 million, far lower than 2005. However, overlaying this graph with the population growth graph tells a very different story. The ratio of population growth to new housing permits should be around 1.5, meaning 1.5 people added for every 1 permit. In the mid-2000s, right before the last housing crash, the population to permitting ratio dipped below 1.5. 15 years later, we're back in the same danger zone. 0.8 people were added in 2020 for every 1 permit. For the first time in US history, more units were permitted than the population grew. This means that we're heading towards oversupply, not a shortage. The second reason is the number of people per unit.
Okay, pause.
When times get tough and there is a true...
Now, our conclusion seems a little overstretched, because if there is this huge back, then more permitting is happening to maybe catch up. But that's just an alternative explanation. I'm not saying it's correct.
Yeah, but I mean, she's also looking at birth rate, but that would not capture immigration rate as well, right? So there's, I mean, that's what's kept the U.S. population growing, right?
Well, it's growing, but the growth rate has slowed. So yeah, there's a difference between saying that the growth rate has slowed, or the birth rate, but that isn't the same thing as saying it's declining or there's less people. And that's where she's also kind of focusing on a certain set of numbers, which are good to add in to the other numbers from maybe a different video, or the numbers being used by the news broadcasters that are saying that there's undersupply. But as we leftists have been saying, we recognize there's oversupply. It's just that all of the housing, enough of it, is owned by corporations, BlackRock, bankers, people.
Yeah.
So there are enough homes,
financialization
there
of
are enough homes to house
housing.
everyone. It's just either they're unaffordable to working wages, or where some libs are correct is that the housing was all built in the the Sun Belt,
Sunbelt.
the Sun Belt, when now the growth in jobs is in the beltways, not the Sun Belt. So, or the highest demands, at least in our age cohort, is elsewhere outside of the Sun Belt.
Interesting. So yeah, it's just a mismatch between building rate and where the jobs are being.
Because all that building, all these housing permits, I mean, if they're all for single detached housing in Phoenix, that's worthless. That might as well have not happened.
Well, I mean, for multiple reasons, yeah.
In my view. Or if it was all outside of, some Sunbelt city where, there was, health insurance companies, but then they go under, then all that housing is also, again, worthless. But again, like, someone could move there if it is, undervalued, but it's probably still valued highly and unaffordable because of where it is, even if there's no jobs or it's not where the economic growth is happening, because it's all still in San Francisco.
Yeah, indeed.
Or that's where people that's where the work is.
Yeah, I mean, for just ecological reasons, I cannot see the Sun Belt surviving another decade. I'm just pulling up right now that Lake Mead is at its lowest level ever recorded, and water from it, from the Colorado River there, supplies water to 25 million people. That's
that. So Arizona, I don't know if this is like an innovation of Arizona, but to have a bedroom retirement community where you have housing, your single detached housing is built among or along a golf course, so that you basically walk out onto the golf course. The golf course is your backyard. One of those is being built in my region, which never existed before. And I saw an ad for it in the mall, because I'm not in the mall very often, but I saw it and I'm like, oh boy. But it's more just I was expecting it almost. I was expecting that as water supplies would dwindle, all the people in the Sun Belt would move to
migrate back
Northeast.
up here. Yeah.
Migrate back to Northeast, but with all their money and all their, the fact that they can afford kind of development. So we're going to have all of the Sun Belt kind of development up here, which will ruin what made the Northeast survive.
Right.
I mean, the Northeast, it's they're like a plague of locusts, really, at the end of the day. But they're boomers, or they're Gen Xers, some of them richer types of Gen Xers.
Right,
and they're dying out, so another 20 years and maybe, but they're not going to be
back again.
They're not going to be replaced with a similarly sized group of locusts.
Yeah.
That's just, but of course the damage of climate change is going to be done.
Yeah.
So move to New Hampshire maybe, because they're not going to build golf courses there. I don't know. Or just fight like the Dickens here to limit that kind of development.
Yeah, just
because
tax golf courses differently.
Because even the suburbs here in my region, like as the people who white flighted themselves out in the 80s, they're realizing that they can't stay retired in those suburbs as they are now, because they have to be able to walk to the store, or they can't drive everywhere, or they don't want to. As they're empty nesters now, and so they actually want to live a good life. So they're fighting for more sidewalk and whatever, but of course still car dependent. But it's an interesting kind of pseudo change.
Yeah, interesting. Yes. Oh man.
Or they're just realizing just how unwalkable everything is.
Right. It's just it's almost criminal the way that they pretend as though golf courses are mostly unimproved land, and so they basically just tax the one little country club, and the rest of it gets to be, you know, used all the time, and yet, you know, does not pay comparable tax rates to the people that live right next to it.
Well, it's a research project, I guess. As a, you know, if I'm a full-time organizer, I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But to look at like what does the tax law have to say about like how landlords, you know, they're renting a building with multiple units, and it's still taxed like it's residential.
Sure.
Even though it's a business,
it's effectively commercial.
They don't have to, maybe because they're not forced to incorporate as a business, or as my father did, like if you're not big enough, you can go under the radar. Like if you only have one other building, you just fly under the radar and pretend that you're not a business, because you're just, you know, don't want to be taxed like one. But really, like if you're renting, you know, if you're renting a property out, then you're a business, and maybe it would be something to kind of look at those units and properties and say like, no, you have to incorporate as a business with the county, and that means we're going to do a commercial tax rate on these buildings, not a residential one, even if it isn't commercial space, because that's kind of how it's delimited. Anyway, we've gone off enough tangents. Let's continue the video.
Indeed.
True housing shortage, people turn to shared housing to help ends meet. It's difficult to cut the cost of food, transportation, and healthcare, so cutting the cost of housing by sharing homes and accepting roommates is the first compromise. If we were truly facing a housing crisis, the number of people per unit in the States would be extremely high, between 5 and 8 people per house. This is evident in several African and Asian countries. However, the number of people per US household is one of the lowest in the world. This graph shows that we are at a historic low of just 2.49 people per household. The third reason is the number of rental units.
So can you pause?
According to Redfin,
So about reason number 2, she's asking a question: are we really in a housing crisis if we just like, because we're sticking to the standard that we need 2.5 people in each home?
Mm-hmm.
By home meaning a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom household.
Right.
It's sort of like, you know, having an empty room tax or a flat tax, where it's like we don't punish or we don't create any disincentive to having such low density.
Sure.
But even when it's single detached housing, because in Albany, we have lots of houses that used to be like one family. But because there's the incentive to renting to college students, they've all been cut up into subunits. And so the density in some neighborhoods is pretty good, because of all those rentals. But it's a whole neighborhood of rentals, and there's very few owner-occupiers. And so it's called the college ghetto, because it's all rentals. It's not like a lot of the properties maybe aren't kept up. It's high turnover, but because it's college students, but also maybe they're not kept up well, or they get damaged a lot because the college students are middle class enough and they don't give a shit. They don't take care of things that aren't theirs. Or maybe even if it was theirs, they wouldn't take care of it. Is the assumption when it comes to tenants, especially such temporary tenants like college students. But also there was like anyway. Yeah. So I just wanted to comment on that like she's not giving like totalizing reasons why there isn't a shortage, but just reasons why, like, should we really be thinking about it as a shortage if we're not maximizing all the housing we currently have? So, but these are social issues that need to be solved with social solutions, aka legislation. But it's like we have a housing crisis because we have a government that doesn't or isn't allowed to run a government, because that's not the liberal way. But she has a worldly perspective of like, look at the rest of the world. They don't have a housing crisis because everyone. You have families that just absolutely won't, and worse, you have all these people that like literally share their house. They're making use of their housing by having an Airbnb. Some weeks or something.
But at the same time, like virtually all of the higher density structures that I see going up are 1 and 2 bedroom places. Maybe a handful of those units ends up being 2 bedroom. Most of them end up being studio and 1 bedroom.
Yeah,
so
the
like,
market rate.
How many roommates are you actually going to pack into a unit like that? So yeah, and market rate. Yeah.
And you'll have, for those that can afford it, when they are buying or renting a market rate 2 bedroom, there'll still be like maybe 2 people, and it'll be like 1 person per bedroom, or it'll be a couple using 1 bedroom and they'll use the other as a bonus room. Where sometimes you have 3 bedroom units like the one I live in. I could take on multiple roommates and have another in the room I'm in now, but I'm using this room as a bonus room for my office.
Yeah.
So I'm not maximizing the unit, so to speak, because there really is a lack of 3 bedroom units in the city, especially at affordable price.
For sure.
Yeah, but that's just how that's how things are working. But I, when I buy my own place, I'll be just a okay bedroom unit.
Right.
I just have to reconfigure the living room to, have the office stuff in there in a proper way.
Fair enough.
Investors purchased a record $64 billion worth of homes in 2021, the most in at least 2 decades. That's an average of 15% of homes sold in many metropolitan areas. The percentage is much higher in certain cities like Washington, Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, Jacksonville, and Phoenix, where 25% of homes were bought by investors. Neighborhoods where a majority of residents are minorities have been heavily targeted, according to a Washington Post analysis of the Redfin data. Minorities usually live in areas that are undervalued or lower priced. This makes them more attractive to investors, driving up prices for residents. Here in Texas, it's common knowledge that wealthy out-of-towners and investment firms are buying up any and all available housing at prices above market rate, driving out anyone who doesn't have cash up front. Here's where things get very suspicious. Coverage of investors buying rental units is very biased and skewed. This Vox article from June 2021 claims that Wall Street, private equity firms, and institutional investors are not to blame for pushing prices upwards. Jimmy Derringer made an excellent YouTube video where he uncovered a trail of cash and influence. Comcast owns Vox and NBC. The second largest shareholder of Comcast is BlackRock, who also owns Time Warner, Disney, and News Corp. They collectively control more than 90% of the US media landscape. I know I'm approaching conspiratorial territory on this subject matter, but this incessant
it's not
biased
conspiracy
news coverage
if there's material
on housing
analysis.
shortage doesn't match the real
Say
data.
BlackRock
The fourth reason is low interest
has a
rate.
controlling stake in NBC, Disney, and Fox.
How
That's
is
not,
that even
that's,
legal? That should, on its face, violate antitrust laws. But
that was repealed.
we just don't do that anymore. Yeah.
That was repealed in the Telecom Act. All bets are off with the Telecom Act.
It's ridiculous.
And that was pure neoliberal shift.
Over the last 30 years, low interest rates have driven up home prices. From 2008 up until 2021, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage was below 6%, a historic low. No money down, ultra-low interest rates, and easy qualification gave individuals the ability to buy much more home for their money. It was also cheaper to buy as opposed to rent, which created additional demand. Bokhari, an author at Redfin Real Estate News, says that if we were building enough housing, there wouldn't be as much investing activity. If we had enough homes to meet this demand, everyone would be able to buy a home.
What?
This makes absolutely no sense. An increase in the supply of homes isn't going to fix a housing shortage if the interest rates stay low. Investors will continue to buy up property and second homes because there is a profit to be made. As we know, the Fed has been hiking up interest rates to stabilize inflation, which has increased the 30-year fixed rate mortgage to over 5.5%. This will logically increase the supply in homes, as we have seen in the past. The fifth and final reason is the mismatch of housing types and locations. Trendy markets like Miami, Denver, Atlanta, and Austin have an out-of-control demand for housing, while other places like Detroit still have plenty of vacant houses. The work-from-home revolution over the past 2 years has exacerbated the problem. Currently, someone with a salary from New York can move to Denver with that New York salary, buy a house, and save substantial amount of money. Companies are slowly catching up to this phenomenon and realizing that they can pay remote workers 30 to 40% less than local workers. If and when a recession hits, the labor market should normalize and we will see huge changes in pay structures. Big names in tech like Facebook, Twitter, and Microsoft have indicated that they will adjust employees' pay based on where they live. Before we move on to the parallels between today's coverage and that of 2005, I'd like to introduce the sponsor of this portion.
What do you think of that, Zach? Do you think that's a kind of fair and just thing to do, to pay based on, because as socialists, maybe we want to tie pay to local costs, right? That's one of the reasons we want to say that the minimum wage needs to be higher, because in certain areas, like a living wage is double what it would be in Alabama. So
true enough.
We can't have this stable federal minimum wage of $7 or $8. Conversely, does it go the other way, where you high salary, but if you move somewhere where it's cheaper, but you have the same job because it's telecom or telework, does that give the employer the right or justification to lower the pay?
I would say in the big picture, no, because, well, I'm just trying to come at it from an environmental angle. So telecommunication, I would assume, even with the extra server use, is going to be less impact on the environment. You have less congestion, traffic jams, less smog in
because it's being measured against car commuting, which is taken as a given, as an alternative.
Yeah,
against one or the
true.
Other, versus you actually have people do work, that isn't dependent on servers or commuting. but yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So in that sense, I would say probably no. There would probably be it should be incentivized for people to work remotely. And in addition to that, I swear I've heard a study recently that remote workers are more productive than in-person workers. Just that they found just across the board.
Yeah, but that doesn't justify higher pay. I mean, it's not like companies will tie worker productivity to pay. They tie it to, well, they don't tie it to living expense. I mean, it's a justification to lower pay. They'll take justifications of lower
they can
pay.
Get away with.
Obviously, we make the justification that pay should be higher based on local living costs. Now, of course, if those costs are due to, corporate demand or the demand from, artificial demand and investment, then that itself is just an indictment of how inefficient our system is when it comes to normalizing costs, and how the market doesn't, in fact, normalize anything. And even if it did normalize like she suggests that it could, that wouldn't be fair, equitable, efficient, or like even guaranteed to happen.
Right.
Unless it's, what we're going for is that corporations will do the exploitative thing and lower the costs. As she said, the megacorps, Google and Facebook, or Meta, are announcing that they're going to tie pay based on local costs, which they can do because the workers there aren't unionized. They have no bargaining power. They're not going to negotiate. They all have an individual contract, which they basically have to accept, because initially it was such a great offer that they got originally. How could you say no to the individual contract that they got? But now, maybe they're going to want bargaining power. Maybe they're not
Yeah.
going to be so, oh, I don't need a union because tech work is so in demand and valued. But in my
wonder about
opinion,
that
it was
too.
always overvalued. Because it was always
Yeah.
based on the value
Yeah.
created online through
Well, it's
priming
just
of the stock price and all the investment that telecoms would get.
Yeah. Well, it's
What
also
value were they
bias.
really creating?
You know, it's our cultural bias to
Yes.
support intellectual work over physical work of any
Yes,
kind or physical
and the
services.
value they create is the value of better advertising.
Right.
It's just a big loop to me, you know,
Uh-huh.
of just creating art.
So-
The value they create is more artificial demand.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't really bring much to society. So in terms of that sort of value. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So yeah, I think overall, I would not. I mean, I also wonder. I would imagine that, though it could be a way to unionize better, having so many people not under the watchful eye of their boss directly all the time. Like if people are just communicating from computer to
But
computer.
how are they going to be organized? How are they going to be communicating with a union worker?
I mean, they could just do it like during their normal course of the day, and then there'd be no way for the boss to know who's gathering and
Pretty sure the
saying,
boss.
hey.
I'm pretty sure the boss monitors all the communication being used.
That's one thing.
When you're working,
yeah.
you're using the company laptop.
True enough. And also, there's something about organizing in person that just seems to end up being more effective.
Not just it's necessary. I've never heard of an example of people organizing virtually.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Maybe cooperating or associating virtually. I mean, obviously we have our Discord channels and collaborations on LeftTube and whatever, but organizing? No, never.
Yeah, so I think overall this is going to be really bad for workers. They're going to get less. They'll have less economic power, as well as less potential for organizing.
And saying it's like ecologically good, or it's like this is how we get. These are green. It's made green because it's a telecommuting job. Well, what if what you're doing is, a corporate job that's, creating ecological damage? It's
true enough as well. That's another good point.
You're doing data entry for ExxonMobil,
And then just also socially, I mean, the idea of having everyone isolated in their own little work pods distributed around the countryside where they'll never even meet with coworkers in person. All that just seems really sad and
truly it's the destruction of
degenerative.
Society. It's totally dystopian. Even though it's sort of what certain utopians thought about, like Frank Lloyd Wright, in his utopian vision of the future. A totally distributed.
He was all about that.
Urbanism that isn't really urbanism, but just suburbia.
Yeah.
But in his time, suburbia didn't exist yet. So
right.
in his defense, he didn't have hindsight. But he would not. He would likely not before what really happened.
Interesting.
The video. Brad Hedges is an architectural sales consulting company based in Georgia. They help designers specify terrazzo, stair threads, railings, pavers, and resin, wood, and concrete flooring and wall exquisite work, and contact that millions of houses, and that decades of low inventory were to blame. Sounds familiar? After the housing bubble burst, we suddenly had a housing surplus. Shortage of all housing isn't the issue, but a lack of affordable housing is. Millions of homes are tied up as investment property. Others have mortgages that are in forbearance or delinquent.
So decommodify housing is going to be her solution.
Not quite, because her next line, wait for it. Her next line is also, she doesn't cover it in her 5 reasons, but she mentions as a contributing factor that many cities still have an eviction memorandum as a contributing factor.
Oh, really? Ooh, oof.
She's
Many
very much a true
have eviction moratorium still in place from 2
Housing's
years
a
ago.
human right.
While the numbers show that there isn't an inventory shortage, I am glad to see the construction industry innovate, automate, and try to increase productivity. Construction is highly reliant on manual labor, so it isn't an attractive field for young people. Skilled workers are aging out and retiring, leaving a huge gap in the labor market. Unfortunately, this insane pressure to build, and build more has created fraudulent and deceitful companies that claim to be the solution to homelessness and lack of affordable housing. They have raised millions of dollars on an idea and not a viable product. As much as I hope that we don't have a crippling recession, we need some sort of reset button to weed out all these phony companies.
Reset button.
Let me know what you think about this whole phenomenon in the
So
comments
that's
below.
the closest thing
and
to
then-
a policy proposal, I think, is to say we need a reset. Maybe a reset counts as debt jubilee, or debt cancellation.
I'd be for that. Jeez.
Because you mentioned fraud, delinquent mortgages and stuff.
Yeah.
But it also means a reset on like thinking big, like all property.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone just their deed to the current property they have.
Yeah.
And we just kind of start from scratch
Redistribute.
with the wealth distribution we have, which is still very, very unequal.
Mhm.
But probably less of an inequality went back when only 1% even had the right to buy property.
Absolutely.
Because resetting, like BlackRock and all the investment, you lose your deeds. That will lower the prices, and someone maybe would have I'd have the upfront money to buy a house,
Mhm.
which I'm getting close to, not upfront for all of it, but for a portion of it.
Yeah.
My next step is to get pre-approved and see what kind of mortgage I could get.
Yeah. That's
But
my next
anyway,
step too.
because that's assuming I have the same job for the next 5-10
Mhm.
years, but I don't want to have it for 20. So I have to think about like how long would it take me to pay it back. I could be pre-approved for 200,000, but I'm not going to take a $200,000 mortgage if it means that I have to work a state job for 20 years. I don't want to work for more than 10. So I'm going to make that calculation in my head too.
Yeah, my wife and I are pretty much in the same place. We are so sick of renting, so sick of slumlords, and we just want to have a place. And it's such a hard market to get into right now. It's as she mentioned, so completely overheated from all these investment companies buying.
Well, maybe you
everything
should
up.
maybe you go to Detroit.
Yeah,
Maybe it's cheaper
yeah.
there.
I wish we could, but we're not really mobile at all because my kids live in the cities, so and they're still young, so I want to have a close relationship with them.
Right.
So we're pretty much stuck here.
And I'm rooted down, though, long term.
Mhm.
I don't know what the future brings, but let's say 30 years
Yeah.
from now, I do move to New Hampshire. I don't know. Not far. I don't have to go far to get something more affordable. But the thing about the telecommuting and the office and the shifts is that, well, because of the housing shortage in our neck of the woods, though the developers will say, well, we don't want to overproduce because that will create, oversaturation, and that
Sure.
would mean we'd have to lower our prices.
Right.
They don't want to have to lower rents, so they
No,
definitely don't
no.
want oversupply. So
Oh
it's
no,
sort
they
of,
love artificial scarcity. Yeah.
so it's sort of weird that to say we do have oversupply.
Mhm.
If that were the case, then we would have oversaturation and prices would need to go down. But of course, our economy is made up of fiction, so we could say it's oversupply and that there's a glut, but at the same time, there's not enough demand. But again, she rightly points out that like, well, if we did pack in units, then there definitely would be, it is oversaturation.
Mhm.
But I think about like how in Vermont, where there's lots of people that are like moving there or building there, limited number of houses and more strict permitting, but like they're commuting to Albany in my region
Mhm.
from Vermont because it is only like an hour or something, because people, especially those over the age of 40, 45, are still very comfortable commuting more than
Mhm.
one who's more retiring age it was during a fire drill that she mentioned, she lives near Saranac Lake, which doesn't mean anything to you, but she has a 2-hour commute. One of the hours is by car. She does
hours.
She does, or 1 in 45 minutes. But like she
That's
stops
still
by,
just
or it's an hour and a
insane.
half. I guess Saranac is more hour and a half. So she said like 45 minutes is driving to the park and ride, and then she gets on the bus. So
Mhm.
she's taking a bus half the way, which is her like greening it of her
Yeah,
commute.
yeah.
But the other half of it is like she's old enough, and I think part of her story is that like this house in Saranac Lake, up in the mountains, is family land. It's a family house built by the grandpa, so it's more like this is so she doesn't have to buy a house in Albany. But it means that that's only possible because the gas has been cheap, and it's obviously on their mind when it goes up $1 or $2. But it's still apparently it's obviously not high enough, because depending on your salary, now obviously it's too high if you're working class. If you're not working class, it's a hit. But if you do own the house that you have in the mountains, or because that's cheap there for the most part,
Sure.
that makes up for it. But it means there's less out there to buy, unless it's Herkimer County, I guess. So that was always another idea of Herkimer County, because that's the county in New York that has lost the most population. So for sure,
really?
like there are probably some farmhouses there, you can
Sure.
buy. But what are they worth? I have to look. But
Well,
but there's also nothing out there. So
exactly,
which is
yeah.
that you have
So-
the greatest generation dying out, and nobody's replacing them, because there's just nothing to do. It's not actually good farming land, so you can't really start your farming co-op there, or eco village. You could if you could
Hippie
really work
utopia,
at it. Great.
yeah.
It's not great. It's very rocky land.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's equidistant from any other population center. It's not even near the canal,
Yeah.
or the Mohawk.
Oh,
Herkimer
geez.
County is like the mountainous area that's north of the Mohawk Valley, but also far west of the Hudson River Valley.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was that video. It's about 10 for me. We're wrapping up.
Yeah, about time to wrap up for the night.
Good
Thanks
timing.
for bringing all these videos tonight. These were all really interesting and fun. I think that Jordan Peterson one's going to stick with
glad
me
you
for a
thought
long
so.
time. Yeah, absolutely.
I
This is always a good
don't have
time.
anything. Yeah, I'll try to find more quick and fun things, but this was my effort at that.
Yeah. I'll make a more concerted effort too for next time to bring some stuff of my own.
The 10-minute video is our best.
Yeah.
But
seems that way.
that Sam Cedar one took so long because that was 10.
Dude.
But I went on the Occupy tangents and whatever. So
Yeah, it was important stuff. It's just, yeah.
But conversely,
very little
we pick a
content
video
from Tim
I
Pool,
don't
so.
know much about, and then I'm left just asking questions and
True.
Going, well, I can't talk about this because I don't know enough about it. And then, so
yeah,
it's kind of, I feel that's boring too.
Yeah. Trade-offs everywhere.
Like,
all right. What's going on with you with the radio station, with your podcast? What's happening?
So it sounds like I got a phone call, and I haven't followed up with everyone involved yet. But my friend Des Moines will be coming to install a kind of either a makeshift tower with the programming software installed, so we can start from scratch, because that's kind of what we're doing either way. The question is, are we starting scratch on a makeshift tower? We're doing it on the studio computer, which I believe cannot handle it. It's super old, and it already feels like it's gonna like crash in a moment for good. Or like get a custom built by a company that builds these first radio stations, but it's $500. But if we do the makeshift version, we still have to start from scratch. I need to contact the guy who kind of helps us with certain things. Man, it's amazing. Sorry, I have paper on my desk, and the mice in my apartment will get up on my desk and just, like, be chewing on whatever tissue I leave out.
Oh,
Or
jeez.
and I just noticed on one of my
Always got to
paper
be nesting.
notes. Yeah,
Oh,
that
that's
is what they're
terrible.
doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ugh. At least they're not really getting into the food anymore, but because
That's good.
I've taken all the precautions, but they're left with my paper, which I never got into. But anyway, I'm almost done with my hardware project, so then I will be, and this is so I'm starting to shift with starting from scratch with the radio station. Basically, it's not an enormous amount of work, and that's what I'm trying to convince others of, that I could do it myself. I just need the software installed and help with getting the automation back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And then the station will be up again.
That's great.
Yeah, at least there's a plan, which we've not had the last few months, but it's because I have my other stuff happening.
Yeah.
And a lot of miscommunications or misunderstandings about what should be done and what could be done. And it doesn't help that the board member kind of keeps trying to throw in other people into the mix because he is looking for people who can help. I'm like, is it the kind of help we really need?
Yeah.
Especially if it's like, okay, there's someone from the college radio station that you want. It's good, like, open to helping. But he uses a different system than we do. So is he really going to be helpful, especially unless, again, then it's like a completely different, and it's a limited number of people making decisions right now. Ideally, we would producers collectively making decisions about the station.
Right.
Except we're not organized well. We don't, when things, few come, do broadcasts like, hey, we're actually making important decisions, or we know what we're doing. It's still kind of a, well, you figure it out and you tell me how things are working. There lots of following happen. Like, I'm not going to make decisions because I don't know what's happening. I'm not informed. And then even if I was, I'm still not, I don't have the expertise of managing the station. And it's also a lot of older types. Nobody's really radical or like anarchistic, so they're not demanding participation.
Sure.
It's actually us, core members that want to demand participation from them. Which becomes herding cats, which I've never quite solved how to do.
Yeah.
Try to organize people who don't want to participate, or need incentives to,
impossible.
Which becomes the paradox of like, well, to incentivize is to say like, well, you need to participate, or you're not going to get your show, or you can't use our be part of it, or you exclude people, but you don't want to lose them. You don't even want to take the chance of losing them.
Right.
Especially if things aren't working out well because there's not enough participation. So there's all of these circular kind of logic loops that occur, which I've yet to kind of solve. Maybe because the foundations are rotten, or it was organized ad hoc. You can do ad hoc projects for a year or two and they can work out. But if you want to build an institution that's lasting for years and going decades forward in time, then you can't ad hoc it. And you have a board that wants to keep doing it ad hoc. And I can't keep going year to year ad hocing it with few volunteers when I'm all volunteer.
Yeah.
So I'm on the tightrope of like, do I want to just walk away and let this die? What project would I move on to next? And I also have sunk cost fallacy of I've been doing this for a while now and I don't want to give it up. Not when there's a chance that it can work out. But it's like I'm working it out year to year, and will it be sustainable? Could it be at a state where I could walk away? And this was not something that the previous person who was in charge worried about, because he well, he's old enough to know that he's not going to be held hostage by a lack of, people stepping up.
Hmm.
I'm like, look, I'm not going to, because this is an activist trap where you step up and you can't step back because no one else is stepping up. And you
Yeah,
feel
I've
trapped,
been
like
there.
you have to keep doing your
Yeah.
project. But for self-care and also just personal autonomy reasons, you can't fall into that trap. You literally say, fine, I'll just walk away. If no one's going to step up,
Yeah.
then, but maybe people aren't stepping up because you're not stepping back. So there's also the chance, you're taking a gamble, you step back with the assumption or hope that this will inspire others to step up, which is sort of happening with me. It's like the gamble he was taking, but I mean, he wasn't thinking in like those terms. He was thinking like, well, I'm training all of you people to fill my shoes, and this did not work because he didn't really effectively train everyone to replace. I mean, if we had replaced him while he was still here in Albany, then he would be correct in what he did. But we weren't there yet. We weren't really replacing him. So, it didn't help that like the month after he left, there was a technical problem, and I mean it got worked out, but that only took 3 weeks to fix versus the 3 months that we've been down now, or 2 months, I guess. I guess it's just been 2, but it feels like longer. Yeah. So we'll see. But again, it's more than just the technical aspects. If I turn the project to being like, I'm not going to worry about the technical side, I'm just going to fundraise to get all the money, so then the board members can just hire the people to do the technical stuff.
Hire the right people. Yeah.
And pay them. And then I don't have to worry about it. Unless it's just the managing, which is just maintenance of the schedule, which I can handle.
Okay.
The rebuilding of it, but
yeah,
again, it's an emergency project in that way. Anyway, 3 Left show is on hold.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do it tomorrow, this Tuesday, but I'm not done with the hardware project just yet. I've been kind of working on almost just 2 days a week, which isn't enough. I need to actually just bite the bullet and do the rest quickly. But I did finish the floor. So
hey, that's a big thing.
The vinyl's down, though I made many mistakes in doing it. There's when you get the ripple, I got one little ripple left.
Oh yeah.
While I was stapling it, so.
Oh no.
It's just one corner, but the rest is smooth.
With the vinyl, can you just like heat that up and smooth it out, or I don't actually know.
I guess it's possible. I have the staple down. That's going to get in the way. I guess if I get the staple up. But I was kind of a little out of patience. I wanted to move on. But the flashing and the tile is next, and then getting the new toilet in. But I have to get the toilet first.
Sure.
So, and attach the flange, which I don't have. I don't know if I have the proper screws, but I'm going to give it a try.
Well, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Toilets usually aren't that bad to install. I used to
No. The toilets,
so.
the toilet installation will likely be the easiest part. It's just all the other stuff I haven't done before, like
for sure
tiling, which is just getting some of the old tile back, the tile that I knocked off while I was doing the demo.
Sure.
Fixing all the things but it's coming along, and I just have to do it during my evenings, but it's tough for me because I want to use my evening charge for my grinding work job, and it's interesting. It brings to my mind the thought of work-life balance, and how like maybe if you compare the 40-hour work week to all the other, like the actual number of hours in a week, it seems like is still a very minority
minor part
of time. Living, like eating and sleeping, are factored in. Then work is actually majority of your time.
Exactly.
A 9-to-5 job, a 40-hour a week
Mm-hmm.
job. And that's where, like, when we talk of, wouldn't that imply that you work a number of days a week that you off?
Hey, yeah.
That's for a fact.
I think so.
To me,
for sure.
Work-life balance means working 3.5 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then having 3.5 off.
Yeah.
Which is my ultimate.
I mean, the way they
'Cause that's
first
what it feels
conceived
like,
of the
a
8-hour
work-life
workday
balance.
was like, oh, you have 8 hours.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, oh, you have 8 hours off, 8 hours for sleep, and 8 hours to do what you will. But of course,
But
that
if what
8
you
hours to do
will is childcare,
yeah,
chores,
commuting, eating,
and whatever,
yeah,
and because they weren't brought up before, they weren't considered.
sure.
They were considered to be part of free time.
For sure.
Okay. All right. Good night, man.
All right. Yeah. Have a good one. I can't wait till we get back together. Do you want to do a couple weeks from now?
Every 2 weeks is great.
Okay.
I like the rhythm.
All right. Yeah. I think it works pretty well. So
it shouldn't be a problem. If it is, I'll let you know.
Okay.
So I'll pop in on any streams.
Sure. Yeah. I'll keep throwing those links out as
right.
I do the midweek streams. So yeah, tomorrow we're going to be continuing on with People's History of the United States, which has been going pretty well. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks once again, and I will see you next time, Dan.
Cheers. Cherry.
All right. Well, that's it for the show tonight. Please join us again tomorrow night, as I said, for People's History of the United States. We're continuing on, I think we're still in Chapter 5. We are indeed. Chapter 5, we'll probably have the last third of it done tomorrow night. So it's been a good experience, even though I've already read through this part before. It's still good to go back over it and really absorb it, because it's a very information-dense book. He puts a lot of history into it, and covering things from multiple angles, multiple sources, stuff like that. So it's a well-researched book, and it's just been great to go through nonetheless. Once again, it really kind of hits home how undemocratic our nation always has been, and how democracy and human rights has always been, in spite of the way that things are set up, not so much because of it. So yeah, it's been a good ride. So join us for that, and then otherwise Wednesday we're going to have another short theory night. Don't know the topic yet, but if you have any you'd like to throw out there is a Discord that pops up from time to time. I can probably even give you... No, I can't give you a direct link right now, but actually, yes, I can. Here we go. Let me just pull it right up for you. Any suggestions you have for the show can always go in the Discord. So here it is, just in case you haven't seen the link before. That'll get you in. And the other stuff for self-promotion. So if you yourself are a leftist creator of any kind, go ahead and throw your stuff in there. And otherwise, there's just threads to keep the conversation going while we're between streams. All right, thanks for joining us tonight, and hope to see you again tomorrow night. Have a good one, everybody.
Goodbye.